Swing and a line drive center field. Sinking. Judge charging. Oh, and he dropped the ball. Racing for second is Hernandez, and he slides in safely. Wow. The 2-2. Swing and a ground ball to the hole at short. Volpe up with it. Throws to third. It kicks off the glove of Chisholm as it was in the dirt. Everybody's safe. Swing and a little roller to first. Rizzo is there. He goes to underhand, but nobody covers, and everybody's safe. Pitch. Swing and a foul out of play off to the left. Oh, they just called catcher's interference on Austin Wells, and the bases will be loaded for Mookie Betts. Swing and a high fly ball center field. Judge back some more. Reaches out, he can't get it. In to score is Betts. Freeman racing around third. He's coming in to score. It's a two-run double, Teoscar Hernandez, and the Dodgers have come all the way back to tie it at 5. Swing and a high fly ball drilled center field. Drifting back is Aaron Judge. Under it, he makes the catch. Tagging from third is Edman. He's in to score, and the Dodgers have the lead here in the 8th. Swing and a miss! And the Dodgers are World Series champions. They storm out of the dugout third base side and mob Walker Buehler. The Dodgers have won it all.
That's what it sounded like last night right here in your home of playoff baseball, 101 ESPN with Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson. I'm Brandon Kiley. The playoffs are now complete as the Dodgers win the World Series after a horrific 5th inning for the New York Yankees. They were up 5-0 going into the 5th inning. They took it to Jack Flaherty last night. They forced him out of the game before the end of the 2nd inning. He recorded fewer outs than he allowed runs. That's not the way that the Dodgers drew it up prior to that game. And yet, Garrett Cole on the mound, you think, okay, Yankees are in a really good spot. And I'm starting to think early on in that one, boys, I was texting you, got no responses. Thanks for that. And I was
There was a reason.
Yankees really might be able to pull this thing off. And if they force this back to L.A., I mean, if this gets to a Game 7, all bets are off.
And then T-Bone and I texted each other and said, cool, BKO, so the Yankees are losing this game.
It would have been a wild scenario, but it didn't get there because they forgot how to play baseball for an inning. I thought I was watching the Blues. For an inning, the Yankees made every possible mistake that you can. This came from Up to Stats last night. The Yankees are the only Major League Baseball team to blow a 5-run lead, allow 5 unearned runs, commit at least 3 errors, and a catcher's interference, and a balk, all in the same game, whether that's regular season or postseason, since earned runs became an official statistic in 1913.
Wow.
They did everything you can to give a game away. You think we remember, with a sour taste in our mouth, that Game 1 against the Phillies? Dude, imagine how Yankees fans are feeling this morning as they wake up having that be the way that they lose the World Series. And yet it was super predictable because we knew all along Yankees are a terrible base running team. They don't play fundamental ball. They're terrible defensively, and all of that showed up last night in the worst possible moment, Alex, when they were 4 innings away from forcing Game 6 of the World Series.
I mean, unfortunately, it has just never felt like the Yankees had a shot in this series. And I know that they scored that 3 runs in the 1st inning, and you were thinking like, oh, shoot, the Yankees might actually pull this one off. But the team itself, you just never felt like they had the gravitas to be like, yeah, we're going to take this series back to L.A. and we're going to force it back in your face. And that 5th inning was a perfect example of it. Everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. And even for a team that like put themselves in a position of the 5th inning where you're thinking like, oh, this is going to be ugly, they strike out Gavin Lux and then strike out Shohei Ohtani. And you're thinking like, oh my gosh, they're going to get through this thing. And then all hell breaks loose. Yeah. And honestly, like that's the narrative of the one side of the World Series this year. It's not going to be so much of, man, what a series we had. It's going to be of, man, how bad were those Yankees in that World Series? Because it never once, even when they won Game 4, and like, oh man, it never once felt like the Yankees had a shot to get back into this, which is wild to say when you're talking about Soto, Judge, and for how good Giancarlo Stanton was in this series.
The other thing that ended up happening there is you had to have an extra 17 pitches in that inning because of those errors. And Garrett Cole was great last night. It will not be remembered that way, because of what took place in the 5th inning, and he was a part of that. To be fair, he didn't cover first base, so he has himself to blame for some of this, but those extra 17 pitches forced them to go to the bullpen earlier. It didn't end up really costing them too much, but it was just enough potentially where they ended up having to go to guys earlier than otherwise they would have preferred, and it cost them potentially with Luke Weaver entering earlier than you would have liked him to.
Yeah, and when you go up against the LA Dodgers, we said it after, I think, Game 3 it was. I mean, you're not going to beat the Dodgers if you don't play flawless baseball. And the Yankees just did not do that. I mean, last night you have the epic collapse in that 5th inning with the 3 errors. Game 1, they make a just dumb play where they throw a ball into second base. It gets away. It leads to a triple. When you're up by 1 then, it leads to a sacrifice fly to tie the game. And we all know how Game 1 ended when they went to Cortez and the Grand Slam happened. Like, they had 2 games that were in their grasp. Like, they should easily, probably potentially be up potentially 3-2 in this series right now.
Yep.
They should have won Game 1. They ended up winning Game 4, and they should have won last night. They should be up 3-2. This series should be going back to L.A. with the Yankees on the verge of clinching a World Series.
Would have been the first team in World Series history to go down 3-0 and force a Game 6. That would have been what we were talking about today, and we would have been questioning, can they do this? Can they really come back? And there would have been some that convinced themselves the answer is yes, because Aaron Judge got back on track. That was really the biggest storyline from last night, or should have been prior to their collapse in the 5th inning. Judge looked like himself. He's starting to figure things out, and it feels like, and I poo-pooed it at the time, 2 games ago when he was starting to take his walks and he's seeing the ball a little better, that got him back on track. Last night you saw that come to fruition with a big home run for him. He made a big play, a great play defensively as well. And then just a lapse in judgment. He was looking down to see if he could double somebody off at second base. He misses the ball on a routine fly ball to center field.
Fundamentals there, though.
Game over.
Fundamentals there, though. You take your eye off the ball because you're trying to make him play. And honestly, you don't want to say it's playing scared, but it's playing to the mindset of the Yankees probably knew in the back of their mind that you're not coming back if the Dodgers take the lead here. And so you're trying to find every single inch possible in that game to keep your team alive. And that's what Aaron Judge did in that scenario. You're like, okay, well, I'm going to have to find a way to get this double play because we're going to have to end this inning.
They're up 5 at that point.
I know.
What his thought process is, we got this in the bag. I mean, let's just be honest. The Yankees fell asleep at the wheel.
Yeah.
The famous quote from Sterling earlier in the ALCS, the Yankees run the bases like a bunch of drunks. They played baseball like a bunch of drunks last night. I mean, they just fell asleep. They had the 5-0 lead, and they said, we can put this on cruise control, baby.
They look like a poorly coached team. I don't think he's going to get fired. I don't think Aaron Boone probably should be fired.
The Game 1 decision's enough for me to say, hey, you went to Cortez when you had another lefty, gone.
And beyond that, that's a decision, right? And managers make silly decisions. Dave Roberts, who I thought managed an unbelievable World Series this year, he has had some bad moments in the past where he's gone to Clayton Kershaw 100 different times in really bad spots. Those are the ones that are most memorable, but it goes beyond that. I thought the team for the Yankees just generally looks like a poorly coached team. Just fundamentally a bad baseball team. The thing that saves them is that they have Juan Soto and Aaron Judge and a bunch of talent. And they've got Garrett Cole as their #1 starter. And that is enough to overcome some of these mental lapses that they have. But fundamentally, bad baseball team. Bad base running, bad defense, just not good at all the little things. And that eventually will add up. And when you go up against a team like the Dodgers, who, for all of their flaws, and they still don't have a rotation, they won the World Series by having like 1.5 starters. It's an unbelievable accomplishment for them. That is a really well-rounded team this year. And I think, to me, that's the biggest difference. I know they have more star power. Shohei Ohtani was not good in this series, though. He was terrible at the plate for the most part. He looked like a shell of himself, especially post-injury.
And he was hurt.
Yeah,
so
no doubt. And, like, this is not me crapping on him. The guy was unbelievable to get to the World Series. They don't get there without him. But in this World Series, part of what helps them win it is that they were just fundamentally sound. They made all of the easy plays. And for the Yankees, it was the opposite. That's what ended up having them lose it, whereas Dodgers win it.
Your point there, I mean, Joe Davis said this, I think it was in Game 4. You know, Mookie Betts, he's doing the little things that you don't notice, except he's, instead of a base hit to right, where it ends up being a double on Soto, it's a base hit that Betts cuts off, and then instead of the extra 90 feet, and what's important in the postseason, ladies and gentlemen, slug, baby, slug. And when you can cut off those doubles, it makes it that much harder, and that's to your point. They just played fundamental baseball, and not only fundamental baseball, but their stars showed up for the series.
Yeah, it was just, I got to give them all the credit in the world. Prior to this season, I was like, hey, good team. Flawed still, but good team. And then you get midway through the year, and like, I'm not even sure that's a good team. They have no starters. Their bullpen wasn't as good during the regular season as you expected it to be at times. The lineup had a really good top three, but beyond that, it was touch and go at times throughout the regular season. It all came together in the postseason. Kike Hernandez did what he does every year in October. Tommy Edman did his best Randy Arozarena impersonation in the NLCS. Great defensively. Shohei showed up prior to the World Series. Freddie Freeman just... my God, man, the heroics of that guy in the World Series, a more than worthy World Series MVP. It's a worthy champion this year, the LA Dodgers. That being said, this series is going to be remembered as much for the Yankees coughing it up as it will be for the Dodgers doing what they did, being this year's World Series champion. We'll talk plenty more about the World Series throughout the day today, including, are we at the front end of a potential Dodgers dynasty? That's going to be the discussion over the next few weeks, I would imagine. We'll discuss that coming up in the 12 o'clock hour and what the Juan Soto sweepstakes will look like. We got an insider who said he's got a projection for what Juan Soto's going to get in free agency. We'll pass that along to you coming up in the 12 o'clock hour. He's Alex Ferrario. That is Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. It's BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. You guys can get involved in the show. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. YouTube.com/101 ESPN STL. The studio cams are powered by the Air Alliance team. Coming up next, we will be joined by the Cardinals team president, Bill DeWitt III. He wants to talk to us about amendment number 2. We'll talk to him about the potential of sports betting passing in the state of Missouri and what that means to the St. Louis Cardinals. We will also ask a little bit about the revenue side of things for the Cardinals as they're trying to figure out their TV process, what the Bally Sports Midwest plan is, and what revenues look like and how that applies for the Cardinals in 2025. Bill DeWitt III joins us next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. You're listening to BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN, and we are happy to be joined by the team president for the St. Louis Cardinals, Bill DeWitt III. He's gracious enough to give us a little bit of his time today, the day after the World Series came to a conclusion, and that means baseball's offseason has officially begun. Bill DeWitt III joins us via the Callier and Thompson hotline. Bill, we appreciate the time as always. How you doing this morning?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Absolutely. We appreciate you hopping on. So the reason, just full disclosure for our audience, why we're having Bill DeWitt III on today is because Cardinals and the Blues reached out to the station and said, hey, we would like to talk about Amendment Number 2. Bill, how does Amendment Number 2, the potential for legalized sports betting in the state of Missouri, how would that potentially affect the St. Louis Cardinals?
Yeah, so I would say, and we've always been pretty transparent about this, when if sports betting becomes legal next week, and it'll take a while, for it to all play out, a year or so, but all the teams would open up a nice sponsorship category, obviously. I think the mobile operators that would come into the state that, would try to sign people up for sports betting accounts would want to reach our fans. So that's number one. Number two, we think that it does activate a younger fan base, many of whom are already doing this sort of thing. And, for all the sports in most of the states. And so to make it, legal instead of illegal, we're able to tax and regulate it. And that's where I sort of take my Cardinal hat off and put my Missouri citizen hat on, and I go, this is happening. There's, 3 billion of activity already occurring in Missouri. 2 billion of it's with illegal operators who are untaxed and unregulated, and $1 billion is happening across state lines and just giving tax revenue to the other states. So that's what I would say the third reason why, we all support this.
You mentioned the potential for sponsorships. I know on the radio side of things, I would call us fortunate because our transmitter is on the Illinois side, so we are able as a station to get the sponsorships. We are, as a show, Alex and myself, we do endorsements with Circus Sports in Illinois. We wouldn't be able to do that if we operated specifically from the state of Missouri. How does that work for the St. Louis Cardinals? Because on the Illinois side, of course, it's legal. On the Missouri side, it's not yet. Is that something that you can't dip into yet because it is not yet legal in Missouri, Bill?
Well, we can, and we have a small arrangement with a couple of the operators in terms of trying to reach our fans, but they know that we're only going to be reaching those fans in Illinois with, that have any impact on their bottom line. So they're just small. It's a small sponsorship category. So we can do it, but obviously if it's illegal in Missouri, that's a whole nother game.
Bill, one thing that not just here in St. Louis, but around pro sports, the challenge for sports teams is finding and creating new revenue streams. So with this amendment too, how does that impact potential new revenues, whether digital or however the market is focusing? How does that impact new sources for teams?
Well, for us, it's a brand new source, right? And it's a new source for the state too. So there are very few situations where all of a sudden, there's just, a brand new thing that, is additive to the state budgets and to education and so forth. So I think that's why we're so focused on it. Obviously, putting a better team out there and doing all the things we have to do on the business side to drive additional revenue and put a great, show on the field when people are at the stadium, when people come, all those things we work on every day. And we're particularly focused on them because, we've had some challenges on the revenue side on both local media and ticketing. So we have to be excellent at everything we do. And when there's a new revenue category out there that is of this nature, obviously we're very focused on it and need to push on it because all of our competitors, are getting these revenue streams. And ultimately what we're competing on is getting the best players and payroll and things like that. That's a huge leading indicator, but it's not the only thing. We know we have to focus on other aspects, player development and drafting and scouting, all that other stuff. But when there's a new revenue category, to answer your question, it's important for us to focus on it.
And that was kind of a follow-up there that you answered somewhat, but in terms of revenue stream, that it seems like it will have an impact on player payroll or facility improvements from the team perspective too.
Yeah, I mean, it's a big equation, right? There are a lot of different revenue categories and a lot of expense lines for this business. At the end of the day, though, our goal is to put a winning team on the field, and a lot goes into that. There are a lot of components. Certainly payroll is one of them, but so is drafting, scouting, player development, all that stuff. Putting the great infrastructure of coaches and things around. And then, I also focus a lot on other aspects of the business, the game day experience is an example, our rights holder agreements, local media, et cetera, Ballpark Village. We want to continue to be a leader in terms of making downtown viable and growing Ballpark Village and making that great. So there are a lot of aspects to this business. We want our fans to know that we have, a professionally run team that is pushing on all these areas, and we want to be, a cutting-edge team in every regard.
Bill DeWitt III is joining us here on 101 ESPN, team president for the St. Louis Cardinals. Bill, for fans, if there are people that are interested in this side of things and they would like to be able to go to a Cardinals game and before the game maybe go to a kiosk and put their bets in, watch the game from the stands and see if they win their money, right? What are the potential plans for the Cardinals if this is passed next week?
Well, I think the vast majority of sports betting occurs on apps online, on people's smartphones. And I think it's like 95+%. There would be the opportunity for us to do like a window kiosk sports book type of arrangement in, let's say, Ballpark Village. We wouldn't do it in the stadium. But, like the Cubs, for example, if some of your listeners have been up to Wrigley the last couple of years, they have a semi-attached area that is sponsored by one of the big sports betting operators. You can go in there, but I think, you don't need a ticket to get in there. So that's kind of the idea. We would have probably a place in Ballpark Village where it would be geared towards, providing all the stats and TVs and things. But we also want it to be something that if you're, let's say, a family with young kids and you're not interested in that kind of thing, that it's not just in your face at every turn. So we want to be tasteful about it and, offer it, but not, just barrage everyone left and right, no matter where they are in the ballpark, that kind of thing.
That is the other thing that I wanted to ask as a bit of a follow-up on that, Bill, is for fans, if you're watching from home, right, and I know this is a subject that we can discuss a little bit further as well with the TV network side of things, Bally Sports Midwest has been rebranded as FanDuel Sports. There's obviously the tie-in there with the FanDuel Sportsbook. If people are watching if you guys end up staying with Bally Sports / FanDuel Sports next year, is this going to change the way that the telecast looks if it is legalized in the state of Missouri? Like, are fans going to see, hey, the Cardinals now are plus 200 to win this game, or minus 200, whatever it is? Is that going to become incorporated on the broadcast side of things potentially as well?
Yeah, in the states where it's legal, the main broadcast feed does not emphasize the sports betting lines and things like that. I mean, you might see a little bit of it here and there, just references occasionally by the announcers or whatever, but it doesn't become like this, rolling screen of instead of the other teams in your division, their scores, then it's all the betting lines. That's not what would happen. I think for those interested in sports betting and the lines, you'll see most of that on your phones through the apps. So I appreciate you bringing up that distinction.
Hey, Bill, from the business perspective, what have these last few years been like for the Cardinals in terms of the team struggle, the uncertainty with the television viewership and the television connection with Bally Sports?
It's been a challenge. I mean, we're there. We just got to remind ourselves, though, that a lot of these things are cyclical. We'll come out of this hopefully better than ever. But normally, if your team struggles, you're going to have an attendance issue, and you got to rebuild it and get better. But here we've had sort of this double whammy of the team and attendance issues combined with this local media problem, which was always really our most stable revenue stream and growing. And now it's just thrown into the mix of uncertainty. So we've been spending a lot of time on that to try to figure out our best path next year, as far as where we're going to be network wise. But the good news for fans on all of this, particularly on the TV side, is that there's going to be better access to the product. Some people have asked, like, well, are we going to not be able to see games? The opposite is actually the case, because we'll obviously be on the linear bundle as we've been, for many, many years, and that's like a Charter and DirecTV and Fubo and those options where people still are paying for the cable bundle. And then we plan on also having an app that people can subscribe to and get our games, which they haven't had in the past. So if you've been sort of either dropped because you were on, say, Dish Network, for example, or if you've cut the cord and no longer buy the cable bundle, you haven't been able to see our games for the most part. So having a direct app for them to stream next year would really sort of solve some of those holes in the marketplace as far as access.
Kind of a two-part question here, and that's something we don't like to do in the business, but it is what it is, Bill. When you talk about that app that's potentially available, is that something that is in the works for the upcoming year? And also, how many fans would have access to that? Is that something that is just in the viewing area? Is that regionally? Is that nationally? How far away can Cardinals fans be in order to purchase an app through you guys where they can watch every Cardinals game potentially?
Yeah, the app that we're working on, and the Blues have one right now already, so their rights have already been, out there in terms of an app. But we would likely do something in combo with them if we're on Bally's, or do it, solo if we're not. But I should say FanDuel. But the ability to get those games by purchasing the app would be available in our entire TV broadcast territory. So not only the core St. Louis market, but the surrounding states where the Cardinals have often shared territories with other teams. So, for example, if you drive north to Chicago, there's some areas where both the Cubs, White Sox, and Cardinals share that territory, but you would be able to get that app in that area. Same thing as you go west and east, and the only really blackout area in that larger broadcast territory would be like Kansas City, their core market where they have exclusive.
Bill, I know for the now, it seems, at least on the Blues side of things, there's been somewhat of a settlement where things are at. But for the future, has it been discussed of the Cardinals and Blues kind of teaming up with what they're planning on doing with their broadcast rights?
We have had a lot of discussions with the Blues. We remain, very friendly and with them and their ownership group. And they're great to work with and talk to about, strategy. Obviously, we haven't, reached an agreement on anything that would impact like next season yet or anything like that. But we have a great relationship with them. And to the extent that some sort of partnership would be beneficial to both organizations and our fans, we would certainly be open to that.
Bill, just a couple questions left for Bill DeWitt III, team president for the St. Louis Cardinals. He's joining us here on 101 ESPN. I know you have a busy day today. Bill, when you think about how your revenue streams look for next year, I have to imagine a big part of that is what the TV revenue looks like for next season. I would imagine that means that there is some urgency here as to finding out exactly what that number is going to be, and yet there are court proceedings that are taking place, and you guys don't have any control as to when that happens. What, if you can give us a little bit of insight here, what is the timeline in terms of when you expect to know what kind of revenue you will have in 2025 from the TV rights?
Well, I think the timeline for deciding where we're going to be is probably, reasonably short in the sense of like within the next few weeks. What the number is that we would end up getting is actually, something that probably has some variability to it, depending on how the season plays out and things like that. As I mentioned, it used to be a fixed thing. We knew what we were going to get. And now we know it's going to be less. We just don't know how much less, but we sort of have a range of outcomes that we're planning on that we feel comfortable with. It's tightening up as we speak here. So I think, from a fan standpoint, like what's the most important thing is like knowing where we're going to be and what it means for them in terms of their ability to access our games. I think you'll see some clarity in that in the next month or so.
Is the expectation for you guys at this point that you believe you'll be back on Bally/FanDuel Sports Network next year, or is that still very much in the air?
That's one of the options. Another option would be to go to MLB Media, which had 3 teams on it last year and is probably going to have at least 3 or 4, maybe more on it next year. And so they're building sort of an in-house capability to, deliver the games to the fans in those various markets. And that's an option for us too. So we're kind of down to those two. Maybe there's a wild card out there, but it's unlikely.
A fan asked via the text line how much people would have to pay for the app. Is that something you guys already have any kind of an indicator on, Bill, as what the price would be, whether it's monthly or for the season?
We have not set price on this thing because we don't know, first of all, if it would be bundled, for example, with the Blues if we were on FanDuel, or whether we would be solo elsewhere. But, just a rule of thumb is that in other markets, and this is not, the number for everybody, but kind of like around $19 a month has been, you've seen that around in other markets. Feels like it's kind of settling around that number, but it could be higher or lower based on, like I said, other factors for us.
All right, and the last thing that I wanted to get to with Bill DeWitt III, Cardinals team president. Thanks so much for the time today, Bill. It's been reported by Derek Gould that the Cardinals are not planning to pick up the 2025 options for Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, or Keenan Middleton. He said that John Mozeliak, in response to those moves, said that the team is seeking, quote, maximum flexibility, end quote, with those decisions. What kind of insight can you provide for fans, Bill, on the business side of things? How much the revenue streams potentially played into not picking up those kinds of team options for Gibson, Lynn, or Middleton for next year?
Well, I would say that, there's a lot of factors with decisions like that. Certainly where we are with our revenue picture, it does impact decisions. But, you can't say that any one of those was like, oh, it's trying to meet a budget or whatever. I think as we said in the press conference, and Mo and Chaim Bloom, who will take over after Mo after next year, we're really focused on the player development process. The good news is we have a lot of really good young players and more coming. So we need to know what these guys can do so that when we do get this turned around and moving in the right direction, we can add pieces as needed to really, get us back to where we want to be. So I would say that those moves, rather than being a function of just like, oh, you got to cut payroll, they're more a function of where we're headed in terms of our approach to our youth movement and, giving everybody in our system the proper amount of either at-bats or reps or innings. And then, taking it from there and building on that.
Bill, I'm fascinated by this side of the sport. The business side is coming to the forefront every bit as much at times as the actual baseball operation side. So sincerely appreciate you giving us some of your time this morning. Thanks so much for hopping on with us. Hopefully we'll be able to catch up again soon.
Okay, appreciate you guys having me. Thanks.
Thanks, Bill. That's Bill DeWitt III joining us here on BK and Ferrario. Appreciate his time. Again, just full disclosure, Cardinals reached out, said, hey, we would like to be able to discuss the potential of Amendment 2 coming on with you guys this week. We said happy to do it. Wanted to make sure that we got some of the business questions on there as well. Obviously, that is very much in the news for the St. Louis Cardinals as well. So if you guys want to check out any of that conversation, you potentially missed some of it, check it out on the podcast page. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. Alex, I'd like to continue this discussion on the other side. Bill had a lot of potential news there. One, they're looking basically at 2 options now for their TV rights. Either a potential of Major League Baseball taking over their rights and them just putting it on television for next year, or sticking with FanDuel, similar to what the Blues decided to do, potentially at a reduced rate. He also said, hey, there's a $20 per month effectively app that is likely to be in place next year for anybody that is currently in the TV viewing area. So that is something that will be a huge boost for fans. That's less about what it could mean for the Cardinals and more about, honestly, what it could mean for fans. So we'll get into that on the other side. And, of course, we got to talk about some of these moves that have just been reported by Derek Gould as well. So all of that, want to hear from you. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. We'll react to our conversation with Bill DeWitt III coming up next here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. According to the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, Cardinals writer Derek Gould, the Cardinals will decline the team options on Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Keenan Middleton, as those three players will head to free agency. And the Blues will be back in action tonight as they visit the Philadelphia Flyers. Well, pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Grant Francis, then puck drop at 6 with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. This Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
You can't please everybody when you do interviews like that with Bill DeWitt III. The praise is coming in for all different directions. You're the biggest fakes on the radio. Hopefully you get done doing stuff and they send you packing coming up soon for that kind of an interview. I can't say that on the radio. Morning show might, I would not. I'm just unwilling. So if you missed any of our conversation with Bill DeWitt III, you can check it out on the podcast page after the show today. 101ESPN.com and the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
I thought Bill DeWitt III gave us some legitimate insight into the revenue streams that the Cardinals currently have, what they're trying to build up with those revenue streams, and where things are going with the TV rights deals. I want to get into the actual news that T-Bone just mentioned in the update with Lynn, Gibson, and Middleton having their options declined. But let's start by reacting to that interview. Alex, it sure sounds like the Cardinals are expecting, as of today, to go one of two different routes. Either be streamed through Major League Baseball the way, I believe it's Colorado,
Arizona,
San Diego, and Arizona.
I think
those are the
that's
three
right.
that last year in the NL West were streamed through Major League Baseball. My understanding of that is it still goes over the air. It's basically as if for a viewer, they were still on FanDuel. So nothing really changes for you. It's just mostly a change for the team. It's who's producing this thing more than anything else. Or they'll stick with FanDuel Sports Network, previously the Bally Sports Midwest channel. So it sounds like those are what they're down to now. I do think the biggest change for fans, Alex, based on our conversation with Bill DeWitt III, is that they will likely have an app next year that if you can't have access to Bally Sports Midwest or FanDuel, if you don't have access to that, so you have Dish. Dish does not have the channel that produces the Cardinals TV rights. You cannot currently stream the Cardinals in St. Louis. So if you live in St. Louis and you have Dish, you literally cannot access Cardinals games. It is impossible to do so unless you go to an illegal streaming website. So now you don't have to do that. Now it is $20 a month, potentially somewhere around there, for an app that will allow you to stream TV, computer, whatever. Basically, it'll be like Apple TV, what the MLS is doing. It'll be that, but for specifically Cardinals games. I think that's a great thing for fans. I don't think it's going to be this windfall of money for the Cardinals, the way some people I think are making it out to be. They will lose money this year, because they're not getting the $70 million they were projected to get from Diamond Sports the way that they previously were. But, Alex, I think this is eventually going to be much better for fans, and it sounds like as soon as next year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a benefit for fans, because the biggest complaint has been, well, I can't access these games because of the blackouts. And now it sounds like, at least from what Bill talked about, you're talking about, like kind of what the Blues are doing with the app, but you're talking about paying the monthly fee to where you have access to those games. Again, this is going to be a loss of revenue for the Cardinals. I think they understand that no matter what, when you lose that revenue stream from the television side, but at least it's something to start with. And you heard him kind of talking about, the conversations that are ongoing between the Cardinals and Blues and kind of what that could look like. This is the starting ground, or being on the starting floor of what they're hoping to access. A lot of people are cutting cables already. So you go to an app to where people can pay a monthly fee to where you can access these games, and you do it willingly if you want to watch games, if you don't want to watch games. So again, it's the start. It's not going to be pretty, at least in the front portion of this, which is why I think you're seeing the roster decisions that are taking place. But the Cardinals are trying to pursue what a lot of baseball teams are trying to figure out right now.
All right, on the other side of things, the actual Cardinals news, right? This is a big one. This comes from Derek Gould. We talked yesterday about the potential of picking up Kyle Gibson's option. They will not be doing that. According to Derek Gould, the Cardinals will decline the options for Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Keenan Middleton. Each of them have a $1 million buyout. I believe it was like $10 million essentially for all three of them. John Mozeliak told Derek Gould that the team is, quote, seeking maximum flexibility, end quote. I have no idea what that means with these decisions. Alex, are you surprised at all by this? It's really just the Kyle Gibson decision today. Lance Lynn and Keenan Middleton, we had already known they're not going to be back next year. But are you surprised that the team's not bringing back Kyle Gibson for like $12 million bucks next year?
A little, because I assumed that you want to try and keep, as much as you're trying to cut revenue, you want to keep the team somewhat competitive and not put your young guys in a bad position. And Kyle Gibson's at least one of those players that can provide you innings and a little bit of a safety net for those younger guys. I mean, we were talking about this during the commercial break. What this tells me is I don't know if the Cardinals believe they're going to be able to get off of their big contracts. So you have to walk away from what you can walk away from right now. And then maybe down the road, if you're able to move on from other big contracts, you can readdress this in a different light. But for the now, what you can control if you're the Cardinals is walking away from $30 million. And 12 of that is Kyle Gibson.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised on the decision with Gibson because I thought maybe he's a guy you bring back. You have him be kind of the quote-unquote innings eater, and then you can hopefully try and get out of, look to try and maximize your return on the Sonny Gray deal, but then also try and dump the salaries of Miles Michaelis and Steven Matz. My sense is, though, is that they're going the path of least resistance, and to Alex's point, rather than picking up one of those options, you can just clear all $30 million and you can go from there. And best case scenario, you got to cut payroll if you're the Cardinals. This is the easiest $30 million to cut, and then you can go in the trade market and see if you are able to move a Michaelis or a Matz. But I also think if they kind of wonder what we've talked about is, are they really going to be able to get out of the Michaelis deal or the Matz deal for that matter?
That's what I'd love to ask Mo, just truth serum. Was it you don't believe you can get out of the Michaelis contract, or do you want Michaelis on this team? Because I wonder if they want again, from the Cardinals' perspective, they want a guy who's been in that locker room for the last 5+ years.
If they could decline his option, they would love to. No. I can exclusively report that right here on 101 ESPN. Now, I have not talked to anybody with the Cardinals on that, but if you told them, hey, you can get out of $18 million, would you like to do that? I think the answer would be a resounding yes, because he's not worth that right now. Like if Miles Michaelis was a free agent this offseason, he'd get, what, $7 million bucks on the free agent market from somebody? $8 million bucks, something like that probably. And he's, what, 18 for the Cardinals next year? So I think that this is about the money. I think all of this is about the money. They want this flexibility that they're talking about, I think is just as simple as, hey, we don't want to be forced into making moves. We don't want to be forced into eating $10 million from Miles Michaelis' deal when we could have just declined the option on Kyle Gibson and been in the same spot. The other thing is they could technically still bring Kyle Gibson back on a 1-year, $11 million and have the same situation. But that allows them the opportunity over the next 2-3 months, however long Kyle Gibson remains unsigned. I don't know how long that's going to be, to figure out where they're at with some of these other decisions. The GM meetings, I think, are coming up like next week. So that's going to be the first real opportunity for Mo to be able to potentially do some moving and shaking. I think you guys might be right. I think it might be as simple as, hey, he put out a few feelers out there and there wasn't a whole lot of a market for Steven Matz or for Miles Michaelis. And maybe they do want. I think the guy that I would ask your question about, Alex, is not Miles Michaelis. It's maybe they want Eric Fedde here. Because Eric Fedde, we've talked about, hey, do you think about trading him for a decent return prior to the season? Maybe they're saying, no, we don't want to trade Eric Fedde. We want to keep Eric Fedde here. Maybe they want to keep Sonny Gray here, and he said, hey, I would like to be back. And they decide, okay, well, then that means Nolan Arenado's the one that's going to be going, and that's the big money saver that we'll be able to do. There's a lot of different ways that they can go about this because they don't have a ton of terrible assets on their roster right now. They've got guys that do still hold, for the most part, some value relative to their current contracts. So I think this was about what can we do right now that opens up moves for us down the road. And I would have picked up the Kyle Gibson contract if money wasn't a huge problem for me. But knowing that they're restricted in terms of how much they're going to be able to spend, I get why they had to go about it this way, even if it sucks. I don't enjoy the fact that they're getting rid of a guy that I think is the second or third best pitcher on their staff currently.
Yeah, I mean, at least if you're looking for an optimistic side, they're backing up what they're saying. I mean, it's saying that, look, we're going to be cutting costs and we're going to be getting rid of some people, and you've seen the start of that. Because I think all of us believed that, they were going to be cutting a lot of money, but we wondered if they would be bringing back one of these guys. And they're not. They're starting off and they're slashing everything that they can.
With Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. Coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for questions and answers here on 101 ESPN. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. This one comes from the 618. BK, you're a coward. I don't care about the Cardinals' money troubles. They're billionaires. That's no excuse for them not to put a winning baseball team on the field. You should have been talking to Bill DeWitt III. By the way, we had Bill DeWitt III on earlier today. If you want to check out the interview, it's available for you on the podcast page after the show today, 101ESPN.com, the free 101 ESPN app. Back to the text. You should have been talking to him about why they don't have a star, why they don't go after good players, and why they settle for the muddy middle. But all you did was a softball interview. Why don't you be more assertive, have a backbone, and ask questions that the fans actually want answered? 618. We would love to ask baseball questions to John Mozeliak. We've had an open-ended invite to John Mozeliak for 3 months now. We asked the Cardinals to have Mo on the show after the trade deadline. He politely declined at the time. I got to talk to him briefly at the deadline at the ballpark.
Oh, how was Mo doing then?
But we wanted a one-on-one interview, and they said, hey, we'll do that later on. We asked later on. They politely declined. We asked after the season. They said, we have stuff to do. We asked again after that, and they said that this is just not the right time to do so. So we were basically told no. So we have tried to have the interview that you're looking for. When we have Bill DeWitt III on, it's about business. Me asking Bill DeWitt III about Cardinals baseball moves isn't going to end well for anybody. We're not going to get any information. You're going to be frustrated by the answer. We're going to be frustrated by the answer. He's going to be frustrated by the fact that he has to answer the question that he's not involved with. He's a team president, and I know what his last name is, and so he's the son of the owner, and he's highly involved in the business operations of things. But he is not the president of baseball operations. There are team presidents on every professional sports team in America. A lot of them have nothing to do, all of them basically, have nothing to do with the actual baseball or football operation side of things. So that's why we didn't ask some of the questions that you want answers to. We would have loved to ask those questions, but not to Bill DeWitt III. We'd love to ask those questions of John Mozeliak, and we have not yet been able to talk to John Mozeliak. So when we do, I promise you we will ask the questions, not all of them, because it's impossible to do so in a 15-minute interview the way that we have to, but we will ask questions you want to hear. We couldn't do it in that interview. It's not the setting. All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort
I don't
Service
have a
text line
backbone, so I have nothing else to say.
For questions
well
and answers from...
Well, you're always invited, by the way.
Open-ended.
Yeah.
From the 314. Guys, why is Scott Perunovich back in the lineup after all of the talk about his struggles in the last couple of games?
Excellent question.
I wish I had an answer for you. I mean, you just got shellacked 8-1, so might as well change something up. I think P.O. Joseph has been fine. He had a bad game, but I could say the same thing about the Montreal Canadiens game with Scott Perunovich. I think they're just looking at this as like, well, let's try something different because this last game didn't work. These are the options that you have. Nick Leddy, for those that don't know, he was sent back to St. Louis, getting, I guess, evaluated again. They were going to do another MRI, but they said he was still day today. You're just putting a new face in there after that nasty of a game. And again, it's not just on P.O. Joseph. He didn't have the greatest game, but nor did 20 other guys on that team.
I don't like it. Because Scott Perunovich, the past 2 games that we had seen from him, we said the same thing about him. So much so that I was like, he should go through waivers and go down to the AHL. Maybe he can get some confidence down there because this guy does not look like an NHL player right now. I think he would admit as much. I don't like the decision. I think P.O. Joseph, for the most part this year, has been good for the Blues, and it's why he got opportunities over Matthew Kessel. I don't like this decision at all. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think this is the way that I would go about it, but he's the coach.
I mean, P.O. Joseph was a -4 in that game. If you're going to go off of plus-minus,
but it's one game.
Again, he played 11 minutes. Scott Perunovich played 11 minutes. That's probably what you're going to see tonight again. I think he's probably looking at it as, look, it was a bad game. Let him sit for a game, watch it from up top, and he'll go back in the next one.
From the 618, guys, is it just me or is John Smoltz somebody that goes on 5-minute filibusters that have no relation to the play that we just saw, and then it continues through the break and continues afterwards? What is John Smoltz's role right now? I think John Smoltz at times has some good insight, but for the most part, man, it's not my cup of tea on the broadcast. I think Joe Davis is spectacular. I think he's one of the best broadcasters going right now. I think Waino does a better job of breaking games down. I like Waino. I like AJ Przinsky. I like Ron Darling. I think those guys bring something more to the table than what you get with John Smoltz. I respect the hell out of what John Smoltz did in his career. The broadcasts are just not geared towards me.
I mean, I think that's why John Smoltz is there. You're going off of the name more than anything, but you're right. I mean, I would listen to AJ Przinsky do color analyst work over John Smoltz any day of the week. I think he also brings an entertainment factor to the broadcast that John Smoltz is just the nuts and bolts of it.
Yeah, John Smoltz brings decent analysis when it comes to pitching and stuff, some of that stuff, and he does have some of those moments, but you're right. There's not a lot of kind of fun inner conversations between him and Joe Davis. It is, we're going to talk baseball, and there's nothing else.
Don't ask me another question.
And I'm okay
No
with that.
fun.
I'm okay with that especially in the World Series. I think sometimes broadcasts can get a little too far off.
Bob Costas.
You want it to be about the game. Yes, correct. I think Bob Costas doing a regular season game is fine. Whatever. It's a novelty at that point. But in a playoff game, I would like you to break things down that are happening right now. And in a World Series game especially, I would love for you to break down what I'm seeing on the field. So that is one thing that I do appreciate, is that they do actually break down the stuff on the field. But sometimes I don't know, man. It goes.
You didn't like when he gave the idea to bunt when 2 strikes, and if he bunted foul, it's an out.
I couldn't believe that when I heard that. I could not believe it. He legitimately said, I would keep bunting here. 2 strikes, worst thing that could happen is it goes foul and he's out. Yeah, that's a big problem, man. There's 2 outs. You're done hitting.
Some high-class breakdown right there from the Hall of Famer.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Coming up next, are we at the front end of a Dodgers dynasty? Man, we got to talk about dynasties in every sport after a team wins a championship, don't we? This one feels like it might be real, though. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN.
What a baseball game. What a series. I really think that the Dodgers just went on a legendary postseason run. We weren't supposed to be here. We had half our team hurt. We went through a lot. And then we started the postseason beating the best team in baseball and the Padres. And then we beat the hottest team in baseball in the Mets. And then we came here and we beat the mighty New York Yankees.
That was Kike Hernandez on MLB Network Radio yesterday after the Dodgers win the World Series. They win it in 5 games after the Yankees had a 5-0 lead early on in that one. With Alex and T-Bone on BK, you got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. All right, let's start out with this. Kike, that's ridiculous. What do you mean Seriously? The Dodgers weren't supposed to be here? You spent $1 billion on this team. You have Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman, and Mookie Betts as your top 3 in the lineup. You were absolutely supposed to be here. I understand that the entire 3 different rotations that you had ready to go prior to the start of the season all got hurt. You also signed a bunch of dudes that consistently get hurt, so it shouldn't have been a shock to anybody when that happened. Their path was difficult, no doubt about it. The Padres, I still believe, were the best team in baseball. I understand the Dodgers won the World Series. I think the Padres were the best and most complete team in the sport, and you beat them. So kudos. After going down 2-1, you did it.
Schilt did that one to you.
The Mets were indeed the hottest team in baseball. That team you beat with New York, I saw this stat earlier today. You guys might find this to be interesting because it feels like something that you'd see in the National League. The New York Yankees, since 2013, are 6-0 in playoff series against American League Central Division teams and 0-6 in series against all other postseason opponents. So when they play against a Central Division team, undefeated. When they play against literally anybody else, they haven't won a postseason series since 2013.
Well, you know what? It's good to know the Central and both the American League and NL sucks.
No wonder that they both pointed at each other like the Spider-Man meme, because they're essentially the same type of teams.
Yeah.
So the Dodgers find a way to overcome all of the injuries and win the World Series this year.
You know what? I changed my mind. I hate the Dodgers.
Which begs the question, are we at the beginning of a dynasty? Here's Carl Ravitch on ESPN earlier today. Here's
Could
Carl.
it be a dynasty? Absolutely, and it will be. There are core players there in Freddie, Mookie, and Shohei. They have more money coming in from Japan because of that guy that they will then be able to use to build this team up more. The idea that they were thinking about, if Juan Soto's a free agent, we're going to be in. They will swim in every free agent pool that makes them better.
And every trade pool that makes them better. That's the thing. You're starting a dynasty because this Dodgers team is always willing to spend money. And he just listed the 3 names as to why I look at this as, it's going to be the Dodgers almost every year until they wear down. Freeman, Betts, Ohtani. And not just Ohtani as a DH, but Ohtani as a pitcher and a DH. You are not just getting the dude who could win an MVP as a hitter this season and stealing all the bases, but now you're bringing back an ace at the top of your rotation. Because you know what doesn't matter then? If guys get injured, because you've got Shohei Ohtani. So, I look at the Dodgers and say, will they go after Juan Soto? Probably. Will they go into the trade market and trade for another pitcher? Maybe a Sonny Gray? Probably. That's why this team is always going to be there. Now, what does it look like in the postseason? We've seen them choke before. So you could see that once again. Typically, those teams that spend all the money, a lot of the time they don't have success in the postseason. But regardless, every regular season, it should be, the Dodgers are probably going to put up 100-plus wins.
Yeah, they potentially could have a top 3 in their rotation next year of Yamamoto, Glasnow, and Ohtani.
And then isn't there another kid from Japan, another pitcher that's Saki that's supposed to be?
He's expected to get, I think, a significant deal for him as well.
Cool. The Dodgers will be like, let's throw him in.
Let's bring back Flaherty. We'll have Kershaw coming back.
Go trade for Sonny Gray from the Cardinals. We'll give you a minor league player. That's what this team always does.
Awesome.
I think they're going to be a dynasty.
I love it.
But it's harder to do than people suggest, man. Would you guys consider the Giants to be a dynasty? The 2010, 12, 14 version of the Giants. Is that a dynasty? They won 3 in 5 years, but in the 2 years in between, completely missed out on the postseason.
And no,
is that a dynasty?
I don't think so, because I think you've got to be consistently in October.
Yeah, I think you have to be a dominant team from start to finish.
Would you consider the Astros to be a dynasty with what they were able to do over this stretch?
They're very complicated because of their history with trash cans. But
sure.
I would say no, because I think them cheating really degrades what they became and how you can look at them.
I would, but it has an asterisk next to it.
They only won 2 World Series, and that was over the stretch of 6 years. So 22 and 17 are their only 2 World Series. Now, they got to 2 others, and they basically reached the ALCS every year for a 7-year stretch. But I don't think that's a dynasty either, because you got to win like 2 in a 3-year stretch. You've got to win 3 out of 4, something like that, to be really, in my opinion at least, considered to be a dynasty. That's where things are going to be difficult for the Dodgers. October is such a crapshoot, man. How many times have we seen this? The Astros were unbelievably talented, and every year pushed all in. They'd go out and get Justin Verlander. Whoever the biggest guy was at the trade deadline, man, you better believe that the Astros are going to be interested in him. If there's a big-time free agent available, Astros going to be interested. Are we expecting that the Dodgers are just now going to be able to avoid all of the crapshoot that is October? I don't think so. I mean, how many times we've said going into every season for like a decade, Dodgers most talented team in baseball. And now even more so than they were previously. But I think it's going to feel like they're a dynasty. I'm not sure they're going to be able to get like 3 and 4 years, though. I don't know that any team's capable of doing that in modern baseball.
Maybe this is just me, because I would view the Astros as a dynasty, even with the asterisks of like being, a cheater. Yeah, just because
2 in 6 years.
But I look at it as the dominant force, and we always say all the time, it doesn't, anything can happen in the playoffs. And if you lose in the World Series, you were to the World Series 2 other times. So 4 and 6, you were in the World Series and you won 2.
I don't think that's a dynasty to me.
I look at that team as a dominant force.
Agreed, but not a dynasty.
Yeah. I would view that as a dynasty, though, because every year you know what you're getting. And that's where I feel like the Dodgers are in this conversation. You know what you're going to get every year. You don't know what's going to happen in the postseason, but if you're in the CS World Series, it's going to be one of those scary teams no matter what.
I think they're going to consistently win 100 games, and I think they're going to consistently get to the NLCS. Beyond that, it's hard to say. Hard to say how many they're going to be able to win. So, will Alex consider them to be a dynasty with your criteria and what I think the Dodgers will be? Yes, I think that will be considered a dynasty in Alex's criteria. For me, where I think you got to win 3 out of 4, I think you got to get there like 4 out of the next 6 to be a dynasty. I don't think they're going to be that. I think they're going to be excellent, and they will be a villain that everybody can latch onto and say, who's going to be able to beat the Dodgers this year, the way that people did with the Astros, the way that people used to with the Yankees. They will become and are that and have become that, but even more to a greater degree in the future. I think it's a lot harder than people suggest to go out there and win like 3 of the next 4. Even if they got Juan Soto, I don't think that they would necessarily be able to do that.
I think baseball is the hardest sport to build these dynasties. And why is that? It's because, we talk about pitching's the hardest thing to predict because of pitcher injuries. But that's why I look at the Dodgers, and they're not just a team that has won a World Series, and you can look at them like the Cubs. Everybody looked at the Cubs when they won their first World Series and thought, oh, this is going to be a dynasty. They never went out and spent more money to upgrade that team.
True.
The Dodgers are going to upgrade this team. They will invest in this team. And as much as I talk about pitching and how that can be what creates the what I think holds back some of these teams from going on these runs is you just have 1 year from hell with pitching injuries, and you don't have a rotation. Guys, this was their year from hell, I think. I think their rotation has the potential to where it can be healthy. And I think this is the worst version of the Dodgers we see. I think they're going to invest more into pitching. I think they're probably going to invest more into their lineup. They're going to invest into their bullpen. I think they're only going to get stronger from here. I think we're going to look back on this LA Dodgers team, and whether it ends up falling into your criteria of a dynasty or Alex's, where they get to like 4 NLCSs in the next 6 years and 2 World Series championships with it, I think we're going to look back on all of that. And we'll see if it ends up being categorized as dynasty. I think they're going to become it, because I think you're going to look back and go, that 2024 team that won it all was the weakest team that the LA Dodgers fielded.
I agree.
Somebody on the text line said, guys, would you consider the Braves from the 90s to be a dynasty? My answer would be no. They won 1 World Series. They went to a bunch of them, but they won 1. Somebody else asked, what about the Bills? Would you consider them to be a dynasty from the 90s? No, they went to 4 straight Super Bowls, lost all 4 of them. That's not a dynasty. You didn't dominate the sport over that 4-year stretch. You dominated until you got to the end and the other team beat you. So that can't be considered domination. I think the Warriors, that's a dynasty. The Chiefs, what they're doing right now, where they're going for a 3-peat. They've won 3 out of the last 5. That's a dynasty, in my opinion. The Patriots, they were a dynasty. The Spurs at one point, that's a dynasty. I don't think what we've seen from some of these other teams, it's hard to become a true dynasty in professional sports. I think we've become a little lax with the definition where anytime a team, the Cubs, anytime that the team is at the front end of their potential window, we're like, oh, this is going to be the next dynasty. Easier said than done. We'll see if the Dodgers are able to pull this off. This was the year from hell for them pitching-wise, injuries. That may not stop. That may continue. This is baseball now, man. Every team is dealing with those kinds of injuries. The thing that the Dodgers did get very fortunate with this year is position players. They're up until the World Series. In the postseason, their guys were healthy. Is that always going to be the case? Because the Braves, I thought they had the potential to be a dynasty. Look at what they've had to deal with over the last few years with injuries, right? Ronald Acuna Jr. in particular. We'll see what it looks like with Shohei as he gets back onto the mound. We'll see what it looks like as Freddie Freeman gets further and further into his 30s. I don't know, but weird stuff happens. I do believe they will continue to be the class of the National League. Dynasty, though, I think we go a little too far with that sometimes. And we suggest that these teams are just immediately going to be able to become that. All right, coming up next, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Alex, I feel like in our conversations about the Blues, we have, without saying this, been addressing the fact that Blues fans are already falling into retool fatigue. Is that something that fans are feeling as we are now almost 10 games, an eighth of the way through the regular season? We're going to talk about that a bit coming up next here on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex Ferrario and Tanner Hendrickson, I'm Brandon Kiley. So there's a great piece up today from Jeremy Rutherford over on The Athletic. It's a Q&A, basically, that he did with Blues fans. And the first question in this, I thought, gets at the heart of some of the discussions that we've had recently, Alex, on the radio, where we'll get into these, not shouting matches, but disagreements on the radio. Just with a lot of shouting. About where the Blues are at and what it all means. And we kind of had one earlier today in the office where we're talking about, the Blues center situation and what they can do about it. And Alex, you suggested, hey, at the deadline, you might have to end up trading for somebody that's, for now, a top 6 center, and long term, maybe more of a third line center. And I was like, this team doesn't need to do that because they're not a legitimate contender. And it gets back to this question. Lamar asked JR, I'm tired of the retool. I don't see any realistic solution to becoming a legitimate playoff contender either. How long is this going to take? 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Do you guys sense that Blues fans are already falling into retool fatigue?
I don't sense that, because it seems every time you go into an offseason where you feel like the fatigue is kicking in, Doug Armstrong makes a move and then people are kind of re-energized with their roster. I think the fatigue is coming in to the sense of it's looking like the same team every single year. I think the retool and the timeline that's been put in place, fans, at least the majority of fans, I'm not going to lump everybody into one category, but the majority looks at this and says, okay, 3 to 5 years, it's where you're at right now, and you're going to be there until you get to legit contender mode. And a lot of people seem to be understanding that, hey, you need Dvorsky to develop, you need Snuggerud to develop. These are guys that are going to be a part of this competitive window that you're talking about. The fatigue that I feel that comes into play for Blues fans is the last 3 seasons you haven't seen signs of growth. It's been same team after same team after same team in terms of the underlying issues. That's where the fatigue comes into play, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, I think this is the first year you're really going to feel it, of that retool fatigue. I don't think you felt it last year. I think everybody knew what that team was. Yeah. Pretty quickly. And you were right last year when you said it. They weren't a fun team to watch last year. They were slow. They were bad.
It ended up turning out to be
you were 100% right. They were not a fun team to watch. But this year, we've said this. I think they're a better product to enjoy. But I think this is going to be the first year where you really see it, because I think Alex is kind of spot on. I don't think you're going to see them and look at the standings and go, you're really seeing growth. And if I'm being honest, I think what that's going to do is it's going to raise a lot of questions for fans of, okay, where are we going? What is the core moving forward? Is it Thomas, Kyrou, and Booch? Are those the guys that are supposed to lead us out of this? And if I'm being honest, anytime you throw the word that whatever in front of it, fans immediately think, okay, well, that means we're going to have to come down. We're going to have to draft and develop stars. Where are those guys coming for the Blues? And they'll tell you it's Dvorsky. They'll tell you it's Snuggerud. Based on everything we've seen, it doesn't sound like they're superstars. And I think what you're going to see is right now you're seeing the Blues kind of stuck in the middle. They're kind of stuck drafting in that 10 to 15 range. You end up missing out on the top available talent when it comes to the draft. And now you look at their roster and you go, right now there's a bunch of third-liners on it. Maybe you have a couple top 6 guys that are coming. I don't know if you're building the team the proper way to get yourself back into legitimate contention, which is, hey, you got to have stars to win in the NHL right now.
What I wonder is going to happen, and when I said this yesterday, I wonder that if this season you see Neighbors continue to make strides forward, Broberg take a massive step, Holloway take a massive step, I wonder if the fatigue sets in for Blues fans where they look at the guys who are supposed to be those superstars and say, where are your next steps? Because these guys, that's where the excitement's coming from right now for Blues fans. It's Broberg, it's Dylan Holloway, it's Jake Neighbors. The fatigue that I bet sets in is when you look at the Buchneviches, and maybe unfairly, because Booch is in a position that he probably shouldn't be in right now. The Robert Thomas, who is injured, but what does it look like at the end of the season? Because it didn't look pretty before he was injured. The Jordan Kyrous, where does that look like? I wonder if the fatigue from fans is you guys aren't developing the way that we expected you to be, because Bolduc's still young. Dvorsky, look, JR said it in his piece today, and he's right. The stock was down on Jake Neighbors. Jake Neighbors was a middle forward, maybe a third-line forward in the AHL. And then he comes up, he scores 27 goals, and then people are like, hey, maybe this guy's something a little bit more. It's hard to sit there and look at Dalibor Dvorsky and be like, well, he's not a star. I don't know yet, because we haven't seen it. Same with Snuggerud.
I would say that the odds are against it, though.
The frustration will come in this season when you look at the Kyrou Thomas and Buchnevich when it's the same problem for 3 consecutive seasons, and you say, wait a minute, this was supposed to be growth, and you're seeing growth from the younger players. You're not seeing growth from the guys that are supposed to be taking you to the playoffs.
I take it even in a different direction. I think it becomes all right, we're close to the playoffs, but not in it right now at the deadline. You going to add that second-line center? Going to start trading some assets? We ready to push? And the team says, no, we're going to retool. Like, what are you talking about? No, we're not going to mortgage future assets to push for a run this year. We're not ready. We're not going to be ready for like 2 more years before we're really pushing to not just get into the playoffs, but make some noise once we get there. And I think that is when the fatigue really starts to set in. Because Alex is right. Right now, it looks like I think you have a potential top-line center in Robert Thomas. I think you're missing a second-line center right now. I don't think you're seeing a ton of steps forward from Jordan Kyrou. I think he probably settles in as a second-line winger, which is a good piece to have, and a guy that is worth $8 million, even though people get mad at him. And I think Pavel Buchnevich is a legit top-line winger. But you're missing another top-line winger right now, and you're missing a second-line center right now. I don't know that those guys are in your minor league system. It might be something that you have to go out and acquire. But first, you have to find out if Snuggerud can be that. You have to find out if Dvorsky can be one of those pieces. And that's going to take another year. So really, we're talking about 2 years from now before they really start to push to get into the like legit contenders mix. And that's when things start to become fatiguing. As a fan, you start to look at it, you're like, I'm ready to win, dude. I don't want to see another team that we're talking about, 2 years from now. When is it about now? Because we're 3 years into this, really. It's not really 3 years into the retool, but it's 3 years of being bad or below average at a minimum. That's not fun to be as a fan, especially when your other team's doing the same thing. If the Cardinals were competing right now and they were in contention mode, I think it would feel so different. But when both teams are having the same conversations and you don't have a football team here, pro football team, sorry, Battlehawks fans, you don't have an NFL team here, I think that's when it gets very distressing as a fan. Is you're like, man, I just want to talk about something positive.
Yeah.
I want to talk about a team that's really pushing and get excited for once about not what could be, but what already is.
And I don't know if you guys agree with this or not. Because I agree. Now that you're the last 2 years, or this past year when you were kind of in the playoff mix, we all kind of knew that you really weren't.
Yeah, that was a fake playoff mix, though.
Then you have the offseason. Remember, the expectations going into the offseason was, hey, they're probably not going to do a whole lot. They weren't going to spend up to the cap. That was kind of our expectation. And not only did they spend up to the cap, they're spending over the cap. And to me, they did a push that was supposed to be, hey, we're still collecting assets, but I think it almost gave off the wrong signals, right? Because you said, hey, we don't want to, when you get to the deadline, are the Blues going to want to push some chips in, future assets in to go get a second-line center? Well, some fans are probably going to look at that and go, well, wait a minute. We just gave up a second-round pick for Broberg. We gave up a third-round pick for Holloway. We gave up a third-round pick for Foxa. We gave up a third-round pick for Texier. Did we not just push some chips in? And I think that's where some fans are looking at this going, they feel like they're closer and feel like they believe from the outside those moves were a signal of, hey, they're getting close, ready to push. I don't think they're there. I think they were still in asset collection mode,
Correct.
But it comes off a little differently when you see that picks are being attached and moved.
They basically just sped up the process. Those picks that they would have selected would have been hopefully becoming Dylan Holloway or Philip Broberg, but instead they get guys that are 22, 23 years old that have already done the development in the AHL. They skipped 3 years of development is effectively what they did by sending those picks out. But it doesn't speed up the NHL team. It just speeds up those specific picks and what they're able to get out of them. And I think they got better players than likely what they would have ended up being able to select with a second or third round pick. The other thing is, like with a Radek Foxa or players like that, Matthew Joseph, maybe Texier, you're hoping to catch lightning in a bottle. And with a Radek Foxa, the overwhelming likelihood is that lightning in a bottle is you trade him at the deadline for another pick. And he helps you like eat innings effectively this year, just eat ice time while you continue developing guys like Zach Dean down in the AHL or other players like that, or maybe a Dvorsky who ends up taking his spot in the middle six of this lineup by that point in the season. So I don't know that it is a speeding up the process to contend. It's a speeding up the process of development. So that way, hopefully 2 years from now, you are ready to contend.
Yeah, you went out there and acquired core pieces. 2 years ago, you went out there and just acquired placeholders because you were waiting for Bolduc and Dvorsky and all these guys. This year, you went out there and you acquired core pieces and you said, we'll not worry about those those other pieces until they're ready. You're not going to really be in, and see, there's a difference between competitiveness and being a playoff team. Like, I think their hope is just to be a playoff team so you can get the experience.
That's a hope, not an expectation.
Well, Armstrong placed the expectation. Armstrong.
We need to play that audio because I heard that very differently.
I mean, he said that they've given this team the pieces to compete for a playoff spot.
To hopefully compete for a playoff spot.
He never said hopefully. He expected a playoff spot.
It was implied.
I think he views this as this is at least a team that should be competing for a playoff spot. And if not,
you think he's going to be disappointed if the Blues don't make the playoffs this year?
Yeah.
You think his expectation is we need to make the playoffs, otherwise we have fallen short of expectations?
I believe so.
Interesting. I viewed it very differently.
Now, if you miss the playoffs where you're in the same point position as you were last year, I don't think that's a disappointment. If you
miss the playoffs, that's missing expectations.
Okay, but 94 points if you miss the playoffs, I don't think that's a disappointment.
So I think if you had to make the playoffs, or it's a disappointment, or it's
the expectations is to make the playoffs. But if there are 8 playoff teams that are above 96 points, I don't think he views this as a 100-point playoff team. Last year, you were on the cusp of being a playoff team. I think they view this as if you take a step back from where you were last year, that's where there's a failure.
Even if there are significant improvements from your young players, like if Bolduc shows he's a top 9 forward, if Broberg shows top 4 defenseman, if Holloway shows top 9 forward, if you see continual improvements from Jake Neighbors, even if you get all of that and the team ends up with 86 points at the end of the year, that's disappointing?
Yeah, because none of the guys you just mentioned were Thomas Kyrou and Buchnevich, and they placed the pressure on those 3 players, saying, "Hey, our guys need to carry us to the next level."
That scenario for me is a huge success this season. Huge success. If you end up with 86 points and all of those answers that I just talked about on those young players end up being net positives for the season, I go into the offseason thinking we're in a really good spot. Really good spot if I'm in Doug Armstrong's shoes.
Go back to the seasons that Doug compared this team to, 2010, 2011, 2012 team. That was the start of their winning window. And what did they do the first year of Davis Payne struggling? They said, nope, not good enough. We need to bring somebody in who gets this team to the playoffs. I think that's where they're at right now. They're in the spot where they view this as a team that could be in the playoffs, and if they don't, in terms of you take a step back from where you were the year prior, then you look at that, and again, 2009, 2010, you were a 90-point team, just missed the playoffs. The next season, 87 points, and they said,
that's where I think this team is.
And
that's where we probably disagree a bit. I think you think they're a year further ahead than what I do. I think last year was the 09 team where Murray gets fired, Payne gets hired midseason. This year is the first Davis Payne full season where you get to the 87-point threshold. He comes back next year, and then midway through the season, they end up firing him for Ken Hitchcock. That, to me, this team is where they were in 2010, 2011. That, to me, is the comparison. And I think we probably disagree on that, Alex. I think you probably believe they're a year ahead of that process.
Yeah, I do. They've put the pieces in place, and now it's a matter of fighting for a playoff spot. And if you're a 85 or less point team, that's a disappointment in their eyes, regardless of the development of these younger players, because yes, you want to develop those guys, but their thought process is we've given these guys complementary pieces, so Thomas Kyrou, Buchnevich, Braden Shen, Justin Falk, Colton Parayko can flourish.
He's Alex Estevon. I'm BK. Coming up next, I'm going to ask a question that I know I'm going to get a lot of pushback on. Can Steven Matz be an asset for the Cardinals next year the way that we were talking about previously for guys like Shane Bieber, Walker Buehler? Can they just already have that guy on the roster with Steven Matz? We'll discuss it next year on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here at the Sports Center update driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. According to Derek Gould of the St. Louis Post-Dispatch, the St. Louis Cardinals will be declining the options on Kyle Gibson, Lance Lynn, and Keenan Middleton. So those three players will head to free agency, which will open up here 5 days after the World Series ended yesterday. And Blues back in action tonight as they visit the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Grant Francis, and then Chris Kerber will be on the call with Puck Drop at 6 o'clock. The Sports Center update is driven by Johnny Londoff Chevrolet and Johnny Londoff Autoplex. See them at Londoff.com. Chevy, together we drive. Are you kidding me?
Our people are about to get mad at me. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line to get involved in the show. Can Steven Matz be an asset for the Cardinals?
Yeah, in trades.
Was I supposed to have the ready on that or no?
All right. So, Alex, you said via trade he could be an asset. I agree. That's what I'm really talking about here. But we're talking about beginning the season in the rotation. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because there was a good piece in the St. Louis Post-Dispatch earlier today from Derek Gould, who wrote about Steven Matz, his plan this offseason, why he wants to continue pitching for the Cardinals, and what he's done to get himself into a better place for next year. We all know the Steven Matz story. Steven Matz has not been particularly good for the Cardinals. Mostly, though, he's been hurt. He has started 10, 17, and 7 games over the last 3 seasons individually. That is 34 games overall. In 3 years, 34 starts for the Cardinals.
That should be what he's doing in 1 season.
Pretty close, yes. That was the hope. And yet, 2 years ago, he was a 3.8 ERA when he was healthy for the Cardinals, which is basically what the Cardinals are hoping for out of him. That's your solid number 3 starter in a rotation. I mean, we're talking about the likes of Luis Severino. You like Luis Severino, right, Alex? Mm-hmm. Good pitcher. You would have liked him on the Cardinals. You'd have been fine with the Cardinals trading for him at the deadline, correct? Last year, 3.9 ERA and 31 starts for the Mets. Ended up being, number 2 starter for them in the postseason. Pretty good swing and miss stuff, but not great. A really solid all-around pitcher. His strikeouts per 9 innings was 8 last year. Steven Matz strikeout per 9 innings 2 years ago, 8. 3 years ago, 10. 4 years ago, 8. So he's right in line with the guy that you liked last year, Alex, and Luis Severino, that you wanted to be a St. Louis Cardinal. So if Matz next season puts together a year similar to Luis Severino, who, by the way, the previous few seasons for Luis Severino, 18, 19, 0, 0, 3 starts for Severino. Why can't he be an asset, talking about Steven Matz for the Cardinals, the way that Severino could have been this year if the Mets decided to sell this year at the deadline?
Because he has not shown it for you throughout a consistent season.
But neither has Severino up until last year.
Totally, but look, you were taking a chance with Luis Severino. But Luis Severino has at least shown me that top pitcher in his career.
Steve, 6 years ago.
I understand that, but he's shown the ability to be a number 1. Steven Matz, you have seen have a great season. And I'm not going to invest in Steven Matz being one of those assets because he's hurt every single season. And every single season, we do the same thing where Steven Matz starts off, he gets a couple of good starts, and then it's like, starting to get hit around a little bit, and then he's injured, and then he comes back at the end of the season, and then we're like, oh my gosh, Steven Matz, he's good. Steven Matz is
describing Luis Severino.
Totally.
He finished top 10 in Cy Young twice.
Here's Steven Matz's first 10 starts in that year that you're talking about.
2017 was the last time that happened.
I just said twice. I didn't say it here.
Here is Steven Matz's first 10 starts for you the season that you're talking about. He went 2-8 with a 5.72 ERA.
Which year are you talking about?
2023, when he had a 3.8. Steven Matz was awesome for you at the end of the season when he came back, where, remember, he also returned as a bullpen arm, and then he worked his way back up to being a starting pitcher. So Luis Severino, again, you took a chance. Luis Severino is like taking a chance on Shane Bieber, where you're like, he's injured, you hope he comes back.
That's Matz.
Steven Matz, you're taking a chance of, hey, if he gets back to it, he's maybe a 3, but Steven Matz has been injured every single season as a Cardinal.
Agreed. Luis Severino is also that guy. Luis Severino's always hurt, man. That was the reason why the Cardinals weren't interested in him last year, is because of the injury status, and they needed more certainty in their rotation. Let me give you the recent history for Luis Severino, because we want to go back to 2016 and 17, talk about that as if that's his recent timeline. Man. No. We're not doing this.
I didn't claim I didn't cherry
2019, 3 starts. 3. Ended up injured. Did not appear in the 2020 season because he was injured. 2021 had exactly 0 starts, 4 appearances on the entirety of the season. So from 2019 to 2021, pitched a total of 18 innings. Then in 2022 was mostly good for the New York Yankees, but once again got hurt, threw 100 innings that year. Kind of similar to what we saw from Steven Matz a couple of seasons ago. Pretty good overall, 3.8 ERA. Yes, you're right, Alex got off to a slow start, but was good. And ultimately, bottom line is he had a 3.8 ERA at the end of the season, similar to Luis Severino. Luis Severino also had some struggles midway through that season and then ended up on the injured list. The following year, 6.7 ERA for Luis Severino over the course of 89 innings because, once again, he got hurt. I'm not telling you that I think you should, write it in pen. Steven Matz. Now this is how you're going to get a big time addition at the deadline. This is the meal ticket, right? I don't believe that. But if I'm in the Cardinals' shoes, I don't think it's a hard sell to say, why would we go out and sign somebody, Shane Bieber or one of the other dudes? I don't think Walker Buehler's in this realm anymore after what we saw from him in the World Series. He's going to get too big of a contract. But somebody that you are similar to Luis Severino, going to sign on a 1-year deal. Hell, maybe it is Luis Severino. 1-year deal, $13 million, which is basically what Steven Matz is on at this point here in St. Louis. I think it's 1 year, $11 million, though, for Steven Matz. Why would I go sign one of those guys when I effectively have that bounce back option on my team, throwing from the left side, who, when healthy, throws 95, 96 miles per hour from the left side with a pretty good curveball. Again, when healthy, when right, and a good changeup. I've seen in the past that Steven Matz can be a high strikeout, low ERA pitcher over the course of 25-ish starts. I might as well just go ahead and bank on that and hope for the upside there, as opposed to going out and signing somebody else to give me the same kind of impact, the same kind of potential return at next year's deadline.
I don't mind the idea of holding on to him. In fact, it probably is the smarter decision. You know, I thought you were a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs in the office when he brought up this idea, but the more you've made me think about it, I don't mind the idea of holding on to Steven Matz, because I think you can still they've got to shed payroll. That's point blank compared. Why is Steven Matz in this conversation for being traded? We can talk about injuries all we want. It's really because we need to get rid of his $11 million.
Sure.
You can figure a way to get rid of more money. Sonny Gray will be someone you can trade that would get a return. Fetty, someone you can trade that would get a legitimate return. Wilson Contreras, Ryan Helsley, those guys will fall into that same conversation. So if you're the Cardinals and we're not competing next year, I don't care if Steven Matz did 20 starts and had a 6 ERA. You know what? Why not keep him and see if he does figure it out? And honestly, I think the actual question for the Cardinals isn't so much of, hey, should we keep Steven Matz? It is, okay, let's keep Steven Matz. Let's hope that he can this work he's doing in Arizona and the work we'll do with him in the offseason, in season, we can fix him and make him an asset that's tradable at the deadlines where we can get something. I think the bigger question for them is, where do you put him? Do you go with rotation. Hey, he's rotation, or is he a bullpen arm that's left-handed that makes $11 million?
Better have an emergency backup if he's in your rotation.
I don't mind either way what they decide to do. I think he could carry a lot of value if he's a left-handed reliever out of the pen, because we've seen he can do that. And if that means he stays healthier throughout the season as a bullpen arm, now you're also talking about a guy that not only do you get healthy, that can be potentially effective, he'll still carry a lot of value as a bullpen arm. So I think that's the bigger question of which role do you want him to hold.
I start out with him as a starter. I begin the season that way and find out if he can be effective in that role. And if the answer ends up being no, if he's not good, we've seen him transition from being really bad in the rotation to being good in the bullpen in season. So a couple months in, hey, maybe Quinn Matthews is ready to go. You get to late May, early June, boom, ready to go. Make the roster move. Quinn Matthews, you're taking our spot in the rotation. Hey, Steven Matz, you're going to be pushed back to the bullpen, and hopefully we can have a nice bullpen asset ready to go for us by this year's trade deadline. I think we are underselling what Steven Matz can be as an asset because of the recent history here in St. Louis. And I don't blame anybody for it, because Matz has not been very good. And mostly he's been hurt. He hasn't been available for you. So I totally get why people are low on Steven Matz. And I'm not selling you on the notion that he's going to make you a good team next year, because the Cardinals aren't selling you on them being a good team next year. This is about how do they get the most return on investment. And to me, selling Steven Matz now there's no reason to do it.
Yeah.
You have the potential of being able to cash in at next year's deadline with Steven Matz. Right now, you're selling as low as you possibly could. This would be like selling Tyler O'Neill last year or trading Dylan Carlson at this year's trade deadline. You're getting nothing in return. You're just getting rid of them to get rid of the money. Matz has the potential to end up being, for somebody else, a really good trade asset next year at the deadline. Like a team like the Tigers should be trading for Steven Matz because there's a little bit of upside here. And if you don't end up hitting your stride next season, cool, we'll just trade him off at the deadline the way that we did with Jack Flaherty last season. He was broken goods, came to us. We got a nice return on him at the deadline, and boom, we're ready to go. I think that has the potential to be what Steven Matz is. I don't think he has Flaherty's upside, to be very clear here, but he could be Luis Severino. He could be a 3.
I think he can be a guy. I said this when they were getting ready to go into the 22 postseason, or maybe 20. They were in postseason 23, but I think he could go on a Brandon Pfaadt-esque run.
Sure.
Where Brandon Pfaadt is like a typical number 3, number 4 starter, but at times he can go on like a 10-game stretch, to your point on the end of his 2023 season, where he was really good. He can go on those stretches. He's not going to do it consistently, though. Like, let's just be honest. He's not.
Totally.
He's a number 3
that's 10 games at the right time of the season.
He's going to give you 10 really good starts. You hope you get them in the postseason. But if you can plan to have 5 starters in this rotation, not including Steven Matz, I would start him in the bullpen this year. I think,
interesting.
I think it allows him to stay healthier. I think his stuff looks better out of the bullpen. You can match him up a little bit better. And honestly, I think you might be able to get a better return for him if he's a high-leverage left-handed arm than if he is a number 3 starter that you're looking to trade at the deadline. That, again, you got to cross your fingers, cross your toes that he stays healthy and is effective and in that role as a number 3 starter.
That's where I would go, too. I mean, you want to talk about an asset. Another team looks at it and says, hey, he's in a bullpen. He probably should be a starter, but he stayed healthy all season. Going back to what we originally talked about, you asked why Luis Severino over a guy like Steven Matz, because the best case scenario for Luis Severino was 30 starts and you get a guy who's at the top of the rotation. From what I've seen with Steven Matz, best case scenario is a guy who's going to give me 10 really good starts in a regular season. And I'll take the guy that could give me, same with Shane Bieber. You're taking a risk no matter what. And I agree, you're taking a risk with Steven Matz.
Bieber's in a different conversation. I'm with you there. But I think what he did in the World Series means that he's not going to be in the same price range. I think Walker Buehler is going to be a guy that this offseason you're going to have to give a multi-year deal to in order to get him in. And the Cardinals aren't doing that.
But that's just that's the difference in this one. But if we're going down the path of that, like, yes, you are going to keep this player. I'm in the same line of thinking as Tanner. If I'm going into the season, I'm looking at, I need more protection and assuredness with my rotation with these young guys. I'm putting Steven Matz in the bullpen because that's a guy who could be a lefty. He could deal. He stays healthy all season. You want to talk about a great asset at the trade deadline, a guy who's been really good in the bullpen that has starter potential. That's where somebody looks at that and says, yeah, we'll give you a shot with our team.
He's Alex Ferrario, that's Tanner Hendrickson, and I'm Brandon Kiley. Coming up in 15 minutes, we got to talk a little bit about these Blues combinations that they're going with tonight, and we'll talk about how they've mixed up the power play as well. We'll get into that coming up at 1 o'clock, but coming up next, it's time to dive into the junk drawer. Alex has something set up for us. He'll do it next here on 101 ESPN. With Alex and T-Bone on BK. All right, let's dive into the junk drawer. It's Alex's favorite time. It's a holiday, which means he's doing dad jokes. Alex, what do you got?
This is how we do it, guys. No, don't podcast. You're going to love this one. This is how Ferrario does it. It's an annual tradition here on BK and Ferrario. You get a holiday, I'm going to come up with some jokes to make you laugh. And I typically win on this with BK.
One of the two. We'll see which one it is.
It could be both, but this is what we do here. All right, BK, you ready?
No.
Tanner, you ready?
No.
Audience, you ready?
No.
What do short-sighted ghouls wear? Spookticles.
No, that wasn't good.
That one got it.
No, he was laughing at
that
you.
one was bad.
What kind of boards, or boats, I typed this out wrong. What kind of boats do vampires travel in? Blood vessels.
All right, we're 0 for 2. We're gonna get bounced. We're gonna get back on track here.
Okay. Why is Dracula so easy to fool?
What do you got, Alex?
Can't see him or something.
Because he's a sucker.
One for three. That was a low bar clear.
That one was good. How do monsters like to cook their eggs, guys?
Deviled.
Terror fried.
That one was
I got
bad.
your thing to pop up here. Vampires, what's their favorite fruit?
Hold on, the best joke so far was that one.
What's a vampire's favorite fruit?
I don't know, Alex.
A nectarine.
Oh, dang it, I was trying to...
There we go.
That wasn't that good.
What's a pumpkin's favorite sport?
No.
Squash. That one was pretty good. Come on. What do you call a chicken that haunts your house?
What do you got, Alex?
A poultrygeist.
These are all bad.
No, they're not. They're so good. What do witches use on their hair?
I don't know.
Something.
Scare spray.
No.
Man, these are gold. You guys are just bad at this.
All right, keep it going. Let's go.
right.
Quick hitter style.
Who did the demon take to the Halloween dance?
What did he say?
His ghoul friend.
Okay, this one's
There we
better.
go. Why did the jack-o'-lantern look after his pie? Because they were pumpkin. Final one, ladies and
I don't
gentlemen.
get that one. Am I dumb?
Why, say that again.
Why did the jack-o'-lantern look after the pie? Because they were pumpkin. They're both pumpkin, but kin
Ryder,
is family.
don't nod along behind him.
Ryder got it. What's a ghoul's favorite nursery rhyme?
Didn't you already do this one?
No, I didn't.
I don't know. There's something about a ghoul earlier.
I did have a ghoul one earlier. That was the Spookticles one. Ghoul's favorite nursery rhyme is Little Boo Peep. I'll see y'all next holiday, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah!
Don't laugh at that one.
Yes!
Thanksgiving's going to be better, do you think?
No, I want to scratch this so much.
My Christmases are pretty good, too. I can't wait for Arbor Day.
I think the Christmas ones were
Arbor
good.
Day, I'm going to have a lot of tree ones for you
TNA
guys.
does the Arbor Day stuff. I think we got to take
They
that
do
one out.
Arbor Day?
Yeah, they're a big
Well,
Arbor Day
it's like the
fans.
fast lane stealing my eulogies. They just take all the good stuff, apparently.
Well, those are gone now because BT's gone. So now it's just us. We are exclusive rights for the eulogies.
We were exclusive rights at the beginning of the eulogies, and then they're like,
Correct.
"Oh, Ferrari, you're stealing from other people."
And then
We never
now
steal
we got
from
them
them.
back.
Yeah.
You know, like the lineup game ours.
Yeah.
You know,
Guess the lines. See, we started that one
Yeah.
first.
Yeah, I got a text from Marshy, and he said, "Hey, do you guys like guess the lines or something?"
See?
And I was
They were like, "Oh, we got to
yeah, man, I think we did it like 3 times, and then they never switched up the lines, so we decided we're not going to do this
And
anymore.
Craig Ruby was like, "Well, we're not going to change lines anymore." Did you tell Marshy where the open was? Be like, "Hey, man, go find
if
it."
Marsh can find it, I'd love to know where it
He
Yeah,
is.
go
said he
find it
found
yourself.
it in there somewhere, but I think they were going to make up a new one. I don't know if they're going to do it or not. I'm not positive on that. I think the answer is no,
Well,
but
first off,
today
what a
would be tough.
What a shot, by the way. We're going to make up a new guest lines open. Unbelievable.
Someone said, "Congrats, Alex. You've made me hate holidays."
There you go.
Talk to you next one.
He's Alex. That's T-Bone on BK. Coming up next, speaking of those line combinations, Alex, we already saw them, so we're not going to guess the lines next, but we will discuss how they put them together. It's a shakeup that I actually like. We'll talk about it next year on 101 ESPN. Alongside Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. You got BK and Ferrario here on 101 ESPN. The Blues are making some changes to the lineup heading into their game tonight. Alexander Texier going to be bumping up to that top line. He'll be alongside Pavel Buchnevich and Jake Neighbors. Second line, Alex, as of this morning, Brandon Saad, Dylan Holloway, and Jordan Kyrou. On that third line, this is where a big shakeup takes place. It'll be Braden Shin on the wing. Radek Faksa is going to be the third-line center tonight, with Zach Bolduc flanking him on the right side. And then your fourth line tonight, Alexei Toropchenko with Sonny back to the center position, and Nathan Walker reinserted into the lineup. Alex, I don't feel great about the fact that Alexander Texier is on your top line right now. Full disclosure. That being said, I kind of like these line combinations.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that there's a better one currently available to you, given the talent that's at your disposal without Matthew Joseph and without Robert Thomas. What did you think of the shakeup?
Yeah, well, in the Texier Booch, that was the top line for you in that last game. It was just Kyrou up there. So
sure.
I don't mind that top line. And the way that Drew Bannister framed it from practice or from their morning skate today was we needed to put a worker on every single line. And if you look at what the line combinations prior in that game against Montreal and frankly against Ottawa, some of those lines didn't have the worker. Like, your centerman was supposed to be the worker on that top line when it was Texier and Kyrou, but typically you want your wing to go in there because your centerman's doing most of the work. And now
I also think that's not a great sign about Braden Shen.
Probably not, but I think they like what Shen can do on the wing when you're not having to take all of the responsibility at the center position, which is what they had at the beginning of the season, and then they started to need a little bit more help down the middle. Some of this has opened things up with Holloway. I frankly think this is probably your best line combination that you can throw out there. I think all three, and if you want to throw in your fourth line, but your fourth line is self-explanatory, I think all three of your top three lines have somebody who can forecheck and retrieve pucks. That's Neighbors, that's Saad, that's Shen. All three have at least centermen that can drive plays north, Booch, Holloway, Faksa, and all three have a goal scorer in Texier, Kyrou, and Bolduc. Their bigger problem right now, first they got to win board battles. Like, that's priority number one for this team, and that's where they lost the Ottawa and Montreal game. But their also issue is they got to start finishing. And right now you were putting two finishers on one line where nobody was getting the puck, Texier and Kyrou. Bolduc was trying to be a finisher with a line that just really wasn't clicking. And then you've got Saad, Shen, and Neighbors. That's an entire line that just forechecks. You've got to have a healthy mix of all. And I think that's at least what you're trying to accomplish now. When you get Matthew Joseph back, hopefully once they return home, then things start to even themselves out a little bit more.
So before the season, I was a dummy, and I said, hey, Braden Shen, why are you using Braden Shen as your second-line center? I think we have seen now why Braden Shen wasn't used as their second-line center. They saw what we had it at that point in time, which is just not going to be where he's used, man. He's a third-line player, and he's specifically a third-line winger at this point in his career. We don't have to harp on that. We talked about that a bit yesterday. Beyond that, like, I think Holloway's been much better at center this year than what Braden Shen has been. So I like him better in that second-line center role. I think it was time to put Radek Faksa on that third line, and I say that as somebody that before the season said, Alex, I think if you have Radek Faksa as that third-line center, you're going to be wanting more offense. I still feel that way, but I don't think that you have a better alternative today. Now that Sonny has his sea legs underneath him, he didn't have the best game the other night either. Nobody did. But he can play the center position, and you know what you're going to get out of him. Nathan Walker, I'm glad he's back into the lineup because I just think that he brings something to the table. This team has needed to be dragged into the fight over the last couple of games, and nobody was capable of doing it. You know who's going to do that every time they're in the lineup? Nathan Walker. Mm-hmm. And it might not work, but he's going to try to find ways to drag the team behind him. So I like the combinations. Again, I don't like Alex Texier on that top line, but I don't think you have a better option currently. Yeah. So I think he's doing the best with what is at his disposal. Where I don't like it is the defensive pairings. We've talked about this enough. We don't have to spend too much time on it, but Scott Perunovich back into the lineup in place of P.O. Joseph. I just think 1-for-1, P.O. Joseph is a better player. I know he was bad the other night. He did not have a good game. Scott Perunovich had 2 bad games back-to-back and has not looked good basically the entirety of his St. Louis Blues career when asked to play at 5-on-5. I think it's time to send Perunovich down to the AHL whenever you get the opportunity to do so via a roster move. So I wouldn't have put him back into the lineup, but it is what it is.
Yeah, and that opportunity is not going to be until Letty's back because you're not going to put a guy down there and only have 6 defensemen on your roster. You got to have at least 1 or 2 extra so that you can rotate. And I don't like it either. I think P.O. Joseph matches more of what the Blues want. But when you have a bad game, they did it against Kessel. I know it didn't seem like it was bad, but from Bannister's perspective, wasn't a great game. You sit him, you put somebody everybody else in. If it's one and done, that's fine with me. You sit P.O. Joseph for a game. You say, look, we need you to be better. You go back out there the next night. What I didn't like with Perunovic was you went back-to-back games with him. That's where I think things fall a little wonky with all of this. But for right now, both are going to play 11 minutes. Both probably aren't even touching the ice in the third period. I don't like it either. I think Scott Perunovic's time with the Blues is probably done. But until Nick Leddy is back, there's not much you can do until you just rotate and hopefully that somebody comes in and just takes the spot.
All right, Alex, power play. It's been a problem. Started out really hot. Hasn't looked good basically ever since. Looks like tonight they're not making necessarily personnel changes. They're just flipping the units. The second unit is now the top unit. The top unit is now the second unit. Holloway with Texier, Assad, Bolduc, and then one of Broberg or Perunovic. They looks like both had a little bit of run with that unit today at morning skate. And the second unit, Neighbors, Kyrou, Shin, Buchnevich, Falk. You make anything of this other than just trying to get a message across to Neighbors, Kyrou, Shin, Buchnevich?
I think that's what it is. You're sending a message. I personally would have juggled up just completely and thrown it into a blender because this power play, the first unit doesn't matter without Robert Thomas. Like, it's going to be very difficult to judge them and say, like, oh, they need to be better. They don't have their number one center who was winning faceoffs easily. So that number one unit, it probably need one of those accountability moments. You saw it at the end of the Ottawa Senators game where they just threw that second unit out there both times and they converted.
They also threw the fourth line out there.
Yeah,
for the power play.
You're rewarding that second unit for having success and working hard. Yeah, so the bigger problem right now for the power play, one, is to stop this extra passing. Like, that's what got them into problems last season. They would try and make that third pass so that the net was essentially empty. The problem is teams predict that. The other is faceoffs. Like, you don't have Robert Thomas. Right now, Braden Chen has been fine in the power play faceoffs, but he hasn't been getting a whole lot of opportunities. Everybody else that has taken one, Pavel Buchnevich has not won a faceoff on the power play yet. You've got Sundqvist, who's won one. You've got Matthew Joseph, who's won one, not in the lineup, and Dylan Holloway, who's won 1 out of 2. Thomas and Buchnevich have been your centermen on the number one power play unit, and one of them hasn't won a power play faceoff.
Yikes.
Yeah, I don't know if you can fix this power play. Like, I just don't see where you can fix this. I mean, faceoffs is a big key to that. The other thing, guys, truly answer this question for me, and I'm genuinely curious what your answer is. Who's the guy that scares you on the power play?
It's the puck movement. That's like they don't have the player.
The puck movement, not even scary when you don't have a slap shot to go with it.
But I'm just
or a one-timer.
I think Holloway showed it in the Ottawa game. They won't put him on the number one unit, though.
Yeah,
this feels a lot like what they used
on the number one unit. Technically.
Well, yes, technically, but what I mean is with your best players. This feels a lot like what they used to do with the power play of Vladdy. You didn't have the number one. You didn't have that one-timer shot until Perron was back, and they just kept putting Vladdy out there, and it's like it's not working. But he's your top guy. He's on your number one unit.
Alternative?
Yeah,
exactly.
That's the problem right now. Is like, I don't know what you do. I think you keep trying. You keep throwing these guys out there. You keep hoping that it gets better. They need a one-time shot. We all know that.
It's supposed to be Bolduc.
And it might be Bolduc, but he's 22 years old, man. He's so incredibly young, and it's going to take some time before he becomes that player. It wasn't right away that David Perron was just like, oh, he's this crazy good power play piece. It takes time to become that in the NHL. So.
And you got to learn certain scenarios. Like if you watch Zach Bolduc when he takes those one-timer shots, specifically on that power play, he is so far up on that faceoff dot. I mean, it's like Alex Ovechkin territory, and you don't have an Alex Ovechkin shot. No, don't get too excited, T-Bone. You've got to be a lot tighter to the net if you're going to take those one-time shots. If it were me, I would be looking at this as like a Dylan Holloway with a Jake Neighbors, a Pavel Buchnevich, and a Jordan Kyrou, just so you have two threats on the outside, but they're using Dylan Holloway as a net front presence. You're not even using him as a shooter right now. On that second unit, it's Brandon Saad and Zach Bolduc as your shooters. So, again, it's just too hard to judge when you don't have Robert Thomas, but this team right now is not winning board battles on the power play, and they're not shooting the puck more often than they are trying to pass the puck.
David Perron did not have more than 5 power play goals in a season until he left St. Louis at the age of 25. He had already played at that point 6 NHL seasons. Never more than 5 power play goals in any individual season. It's going to take some time with Bolduc, guys. It might end up getting there. He may become exactly what David Perron was on the power play. But for right now, let's give it some time. The truth to T-Bone's question, they don't have one. They don't have a specific shot, a specific player, a specific skill that scares you right now on the power play. It's about the unit, and that's why it comes down to coaching. Like, they're going to need to out-scheme these opponents. And early on, it appeared that they did, right? You remember that first game, the way that they They drew that thing up, but that's really hard to do. Eventually, it comes down to, hey, you need players to make plays. So I don't know how the Blues change that. I don't know how they avoid the fact that they just don't have that shot that they've been missing. Hopefully, they can find a way. Blues back in action tonight against the Flyers on the road. Pre-game coverage with Alex begins at 5 o'clock. Puck drop for that one with Chris Kerber tonight at 6 right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN. Coming up next, it's time for T-Bone's favorite time of the week. It is Believe It or Not here on BK and Ferrario.
Guys, Mike, right? Look at him just bail out. What was that?
What a pace.
A rare Mike Ryder sighting.
Believe it or not, I'm walking on air. I never thought I could feel so
Free. We're flying away on a wing and a prayer. Who could it be?
Believe it or not, it's just me.
314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line for Believe It or Not. You guys give us a scenario. We will tell you if we are believing it or not here on BK and Ferrario. I spent a week practicing just for the two of you.
Good.
I knew I let you down last week, and I couldn't do that in back-to-back
You don't need
weeks.
to practice, man. The sinking's fine. It's when you do this big bird wing flapping crap
I felt
you
like
forget
this
the
was
words.
the week to do it as well because I've got my Mighty Ducks costume going. And I thought maybe, ducks fly together. It would really bring
but
everything.
we don't fly with you.
All right. 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service text line. Say, when am I flying south?
Yeah.
Hopefully soon,
What would
right?
you like to know?
Hopefully soon.
Would it be T-Bone and Ferrario or Ferrario and T-Bone?
No, it'd be T-Bone and Ferrari.
Get the hell out of here.
Ferrari
You
and
think
T-Bone
he's-
just
you think he's
doesn't
gonna
roll
be-
off the tongue.
Get the hell out of here.
Might just be T-Bone and Friend.
No.
Friend? Are you producing the show and hosting? So there is no
It'd be called Ferrario and
producer
Company.
anymore?
Yeah, sure.
Okay.
No, I'd let my boys Bradford and Grant in on this.
It'd be called Ferrario
You'd
and
allow
Company.
it.
Yeah.
You have a lot of ownership
Boy,
over this show suddenly.
Yeah.
Boy, I can
he's got
tell
that
I've been around
prowess?
BK too long because that was a tone problem.
It'll be Ferrario
I'm
and
so
Company.
sorry to Bradford and Grant that came out that way.
All right, let's get into Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, despite all the talk about Juan Soto as a potential option for the Dodgers this offseason, they will actually end up making their splash by signing Corbin Burns as a starting pitcher and adding to their pitching depth with a starter this offseason. Believe it or not, Corbin Burns is actually the top target for the Dodgers.
I'm going to not believe that because I think the Dodgers are going to acquire that starting pitcher via trade. I think they're going to go out to the trade market and they're going to trade for a guy that fits into the rotation. Yeah, I think that if they're going to make a splash, Juan Soto's the guy.
I'm not going to believe it. I think if they're going anywhere to go getting a starting pitcher, I think it's either A, they're going to explore the trade market, or B, they're going to sign the kid that's coming over from Japan. Everybody seems to rave about him. He's probably the best arm, and I think he's pretty young too.
24.
Yeah, there you go. He's the guy. You bring him in, he fits into your core with Yamamoto, Ohtani, Betts. Like, that makes a ton of sense. I think that's the guy they target to make their
Craziest
splash.
part, he would be signing a minor league contract with the team because of his age. So if he ends up coming over now, he's giving up a lot of money. A lot of money, just as Shohei Ohtani did. If he waits a year, he could potentially get an actual free agency deal, similar to what we saw with like Hassan Kam or last year what Yamamoto decided to do. So my assumption would be that he would wait. That's the smart business move, but I don't know. Who knows, man? Maybe he wants to come over and play with
When
Shohei
the
and
Dodgers
Yamamoto.
call, you answer.
Dude, that'd be unbelievable. All right, Alex, what do you got for us? I'm believing this. I do think I don't know for sure that it ends up being Corbin Burns, but I do think they make a big splash in free agency via a starter.
All right, guys, believe it or not, over the next 10 games, because we're at the 11-game mark for St. Louis tonight, over the next 10 games, the Blues go above 500. 10 games, Flyers, Maple Leafs, Lightning,
This is a
Utah,
tough stretch, man.
Capitals, Bruins, Sabres, Bruins, Hurricanes.
They couldn't even show up for Montreal and Ottawa, who I don't think is very good. So I can't say that I'm going to know any idea what they do. I think odds are they're going to be below 500 in this stretch, so I'm not going to believe this. And now tell me why they will.
I don't know if I can tell you why. I don't know if they will.
They've broken you on Halloween.
No, they haven't broken me. I don't think it's going to be like 3-10 or 3-7 over those 10-game stretches. But I mean, BK is right, man. Like,
This is a really tough stretch.
the one
against, man.
positive is, like, even though this is weird to say positive because you just got shellacked by Montreal and Ottawa, but like, you have not had any success against the Western Conference early on in the season. It's been Eastern Conference where you've picked up the wins and you've looked really good. Carolina, the Islanders, Toronto Maple Leafs, and like, you take on Toronto, Philly, Tampa, Washington, Boston, Buffalo, Carolina. But I also look at this as, man, without Robert Thomas, you hope that Matthew Joseph is back because that at least provides some depth. I would say not believe this. I think you're going to be closer to 500 than you are above 500.
Yeah, I think like 7 points out of the potential 20 feels about right to me.
I thought you were going
winning
to say 7-3.
No,
I was like, whoa.
Winning 3 in regulation, getting a point in overtime at some point as well, something like that. T-Bone, what do you got?
Guys, believe it or not, the biggest threat in the National League to the Dodgers' potential dynasty is the San Diego Padres.
In terms of a team, if I'm going to put a team's name on it, I believe it. If I was saying what is the actual biggest threat, it's injuries and baseball. Baseball's postseason is the biggest threat to their dynasty. But if I'm going to put a team name on it, I think the the Padres are.
Are you saying it's just the Padres? Because I would put the Diamondbacks into that.
Well, they would be the biggest.
Yeah, like the team that you say over the next 5 years, the team that if they run into in the playoffs is the one that probably you feel like could knock them out.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of them. It's the tough part, like the Padres, Phillies, Braves.
I think the Diamondbacks I would put up there with the Padres, but I'll believe it. I think the Padres probably are the number one team.
See, I'm glad you said Diamondbacks because I'm not believing this. I think it is Arizona. I think the Padres, I mean, they're now without Joe Musgrove for all of next season. If not, maybe he comes back late. You look at their core is getting older. Manny Machado getting older. Came off of major wrist surgery this year, I think it was, and he got off to a slow start. You've got Yu Darvish that's getting older. Dylan Cease was fine this year, but he wasn't anything to write home about. I can see where their core kind of starts to get a little bit up there in age, especially on their pitching side. I think the biggest threat is Arizona. I mean, they've got the two-headed monster in Gallen and Kelly. They've got Corbin Carroll under contract, who I expect is going to bounce back. Ketel Marte's on a good deal. Now, they got to figure out what they're doing at first base because Christian Walker's a free agent. But I just think they have a more complete... They have the best offense in baseball this year. And you add in that their pitching just dealt with injuries. I expect a bounce back from Jordan Montgomery this year. And if he bounces back, maybe they sign him to a long-term deal. Eduardo Rodriguez is signed. I think they're the biggest threat to the LA Dodgers.
From the 636, guys, if healthy, it's actually the Braves. I don't know, man. Their pitching is a serious question.
And their offense had a weird year. Like, everybody talks about, Matt Olson. Matt Olson was not the guy you saw 2 years ago. Neither was Austin Riley, really.
That whole decision of going with Olson over Freddie Freeman, it didn't look so bad early on, but it's the 1 year. Starting to look like it might have been a problem for them. They did get much younger, so I understood it from an analytical perspective, but dude, Freddie Freeman's he's a better baseball player. And if I was going to have one of the two, I would go Freddie. I understand there were some potential clubhouse dynamics there with Acuna and Freeman. I'm not sure that they necessarily saw eye to eye, and they wanted to hand the franchise over to Acuna. Fortunately, Acuna barely plays baseball nowadays, so there's some...
I wonder why he wants to dominate the clubhouse. He's always there.
All right, 314-399-9646 is the Air Comfort Service X line for Believe It or Not. Guys, believe it or not, the Cardinals will make it back to the postseason before the Blues.
Not. I mean, we could be negative all we want. I still think this team can compete for a playoff spot this year, and I don't know if the Cardinals are a playoff team for the next 2 to 3 years.
I'll say not. I don't know if it's this year where the Blues will get to that point. I don't think they're a playoff team this year. I can see maybe next year where you can see the Blues maybe kind of start to get in that conversation of squeaking in. I think the Cardinals are 3 to 5 years away before they're back into the playoffs.
I think they're on such similar timelines, but the Blues will have 2 opportunities to make it while the Cardinals have 1. Next year, if the Blues get in, they would get in before the Cardinals have that second opportunity. So I'll say not. I'll say I'm still siding with the Blues, but it's close to me. If you told me, hey, they both make it 2 years from now, which one's more likely to do that? I'd probably lean Cardinals. I don't know if that's right or not. All right, believe it or not, from the 314, both Tommy Edman and Jack Flaherty will play somewhere other than the Dodgers next season. No. Tommy Edman's under contract for 1 more year, $9.5 million. They would have to trade him for this to be true. Jack Flaherty is a free agent. So believe it or not, both Tommy Edman and Jack Flaherty go elsewhere.
Not. Tommy Edman's a Dodger until the contract's up. Tommy Edman's a Dodger. If you're them, that's a perfect piece to match how the Dodgers like to operate.
100%.
Dude who could play 4 different positions for you, and he was, before Freddie Freeman decided to go off, probably in the front line of being an MVP for that team in the postseason.
Yeah, I'm not going to believe this. I think Edman will stick around. Jack's the one I don't know. I don't know how they feel after his October, which was inconsistent.
Especially when you see Walker Buehler's having October.
And he's going to get a good contract, too. And if you're the Dodgers, do you want Flaherty or do you go with, whether it be Corbin Burns, the kid coming over from Japan? They're going to have a lot of choices. So I'll say not, but I do because I think Edman will be around.
I think Edman will 100% be around next year. That's a great contract for the Dodgers. Could have been a great contract for the Cardinals if they didn't have these money complications going into next season, but it's perfect for what the Dodgers need. Alex, you hit it 100% on the head. If they end up going to get Willy Adames, hey, we can put Tommy Edman in center field. If they don't get Willy Adames, we can go get a center fielder for us next season.
You started the year with...
Go get Harrison Bader.
You started... Whoa, easy. You started the
Dodgers are going to end up winning a World Series next year with Jack Flaherty, Tommy Edman, Harrison Bader. It's going to be amazing.
I mean, you started the season with Mookie Betts playing shortstop for them.
Lance Lynn will go back.
Oh, my God, yeah.
Kyle Gibson would be a perfect Dodger. Perfect Dodger.
Wow, I can't wait.
They should go get the Cardinals rotation from last year and just throw it into like the 6, 7, 8, 9 role.
This is the thing that's so frustrating about the Cardinals is they have so many of the necessary components of a World Series contending team. They're missing the superstars.
We can't afford
No,
it.
they're not, man. They got the superstars on their roster. Mason Wynn.
Nolan Arenado.
That's one of them.
You told me Wynn's going to hit, what was it, 30 bombs or something crazy?
No, I said he
Or-
could get to 25 or 30.
What's it good for, man?
Yeah, thank you.
Jimmy Rollins. He's going to be Jimmy Rollins. Did we ever bring that up on the air? We ever end up talking about that?
No, we were at Centene. I feel like something broke that day.
Okay,
I
well,
don't remember what it was.
Probably you're like,
my take on Mason Wynn is that he could be for the Cardinals what Jimmy Rollins was in his career, which is like a roughly league average hitter, but has more value than what the numbers would indicate to you. Multi-time All-Star. I'm not sure he'll ever have the 2007 season that Jimmy Rollins did, where it was 20 triples, 30 home runs, and 95 RBI.
And won a what?
MVP.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that he'll have that in his
that
range
ain't
of
gonna
outcomes, but I do think he could have a Jimmy Rollins type of career with potentially a little better defense even. So consistently a guy that stole like 20 to 30 bags. I'm not sure he has all of that in his range of outcomes.
boy, you are selling this one
I think
right
he could
now.
be a little better in terms of the batting average. I think he might have a little bit more pop in his bat.
I don't know what you're hearing, T-Bone, but it sounds like they still need a superstar on their roster.
Jimmy Rollins. That's what you've got.
Even
Now you
with-
need your Ryan Howard.
Alec Burleson's our Howard, baby.
Get yourself a Ryan Howard.
Actually,
get
the
yourself
guy-
Chase
the
Utley
guy
in
that
the
would
World
be-
Series.
Get
Here we come.
yourself a couple of aces, too, in the
Holiday.
rotation.
Yeah. The guy that would
Aaron
be
Nola is 24
Howard
years old.
would be like Nolan Gorman. That would be your Ryan Howard. All right, man, we are going to be good.
Who's your Chase Utley? Donovan?
J.J. Weatherholt.
Donovan could be an Utley. I don't know. Chase Utley.
You guys are squint. Hold on here. Put these on while you're squinting.
Because our future's so bright?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's blinding right now. These
Utley-
100-win Cardinals next year.
Utley was a little better than I'm giving him credit for.
I was going to say, there's no way it was.
That's more like in line with what.
He just throws out there, Chase Utley could be Brendan Donovan.
Yeah, that's more of like the Jordan Walker. If you told me today, hey, Jordan Walker has the first 7 years of his career that Chase Utley had offensively, I think I would take it. I think I would sign up for that right now. Chase Utley in year 3 was a 915 OPS with a 291 batting average.
I can't wait.
All right, coming up next, I forgot we have Joey Vitale. We got to get to him now here on 101 ESPN.
Tanner Hendrickson here with a Sports Center update brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling. Blues back in action tonight as they visit the Philadelphia Flyers. We'll have pregame coverage starting at 5 o'clock with Grant Francis, then puck drop at 6 o'clock with the voice of the Blues, Chris Kerber. The Sports Center update is brought to you by Saliga Heating and Cooling, an independent American Standard heating and air conditioning dealer.
Joey Vitale, Blues analyst for 101 ESPN and FanDuel Sports Midwest, joins us now via the Collier and Thompson hotline. Joe, appreciate the time as always, man. How you doing today?
Joey!
What's up, boys? What's up? Things are great, as always.
Joe, I understand it that you were at a Halloween thing today. Are you going as anything tonight? Are you trick-or-treating? What's the plan with the Cheaper by the Dozen household?
Yeah, I got this chicken head. I put this big chicken on my head, and the kids get some laughs. I kind of cluck around a little bit. It gets a few laughs. I bring it out every now and then. I got a cow head, a chicken head. I got an eggplant head, a banana head. I kind of just go with the head. Huh? Yeah, eggplant, big purple.
Sure.
You know what an eggplant is.
Yeah, I use the emojis a lot.
Yep.
Emojis are good. We're kind of in a bit of a scary theme at the Vitale household this year. A lot of scream masks, a lot of clowns. We went to that creepy world. You guys ever been out to that
How'd
creepy
that go, Joe?
Out there?
Yeah, I never got to ask. You said you were taking your two oldest,
world.
the haunted house. How did it go?
Disaster.
Really?
Oh, my God. Do not go to Creepy World.
Hey, I can't say that, Joey. I don't know if they want to do any kind of endorsements or sponsorships here on the air, but
I think you could say
that was Joey Vitale specifically.
I think you could say don't take, how old, Joe? 10-year-old to Creepy World?
Don't do it. Don't do it. I don't care how much money they want to pay you for a lot of endorsements. Don't do it. It literally, I mean, guys, we're talking about grown humans and monsters chasing you around with chainsaws. Clowns around every corner, any kind of fear you've had as a child, they basically have found it and used it against you. And of course, my kids, I brought 3 of the older ones, and then they brought all their buddies, and then they have me lead the way. I mean, here's the deal. Here's the deal. When you become a father, when you become a husband, there are certain things you're signing up for. Like, okay, I'm getting married. I'm going to be loyal to one woman. I'm going to be loyal to one man. You know that head into it, right? I'm going to be a father. Okay, yeah, I'm going to lose sleep here and there. You sure. know certain things are coming your way. Now, you don't know what you're signing up for when it comes to Creepy World, because I had no idea I was the leader of the pack through the haunted house, one of 18 of them.
Yeah, Joe, you got to go in the back on that. If there's a group, you tell them, no. This is your fun. I'm going to sit back and enjoy.
Well, here's the kick in the rear end, is that I did do that because I'm probably more scared than any 10-year-old I had on my party. But then the problem is I just spent $35 on each one of these little minions to go through this stupid haunted house. I'm like, well, I'm going to at least get some of my money's worth. So I had to man up and so at the end of the day, you become a father, and you don't know that one day you become the leader through the haunted house, much like the noiser checker-outer. I never knew that I was going to become the noiser checker-outer in the household, where you're sleeping in the middle of the night and my wife nudges me or kicks me and says, what's that? Can you go check it out? Meaning, if someone's in the house, I want you to be the first one to die, essentially what we're talking about here.
Yeah, correct. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's a fun role to have.
Last night, I don't know if you woke up with it, Joey, but I was the one that had to wake up to find out from KMOV whether or not we needed to go downstairs with the little one. So I became that, too, the weather checker-outer.
Nope. In our house, there's no such thing as a tornado. Storms do not wake. Anyone out there who wants to rob my house, just do it. We have so many noise machines. We have white noise machines coming out the wazoo in our second floor there because we got all these kids that are trying to sleep. We didn't even hear anything. Everyone's like, how about that? Waking up at 2:30, everyone's grumpy. I was like, I don't know. I slept right through it.
Yep. Welcome to our household, Joe.
All right, Joe. So you went through the haunted house. The Blues had something similar where they were spooked out by the Montreal Canadiens the other night, and then it followed up with Ottawa. And
That was real scary.
A rough one there for them as well. They've switched up the line combinations going into tonight. It looks like P.O. Joseph coming out as well. Scott Perunovic going in. Joey, I'm sure you've been a part of teams where you're going through something like this. Got a couple of guys that are out with significant injuries potentially, and you just had a really rough performance. What is said in that room? What is the mindset going into a game like this against Philadelphia?
I think the biggest thing, when you're right, you play in games like this before. We call it the ultimate quicksand game, where you find yourself in quicksand right out the hop. You just didn't feel like it was the right night. And then all of a sudden, one goes in, two goes in. And as you begin to fight back, sometimes you have fight back, like we saw in the Montreal game, like we saw in the Carolina Hurricanes at home a couple weeks ago, where the Blues fell behind, being outshot 16-4 in the first period. But you're only down by a goal. You come back and you win that game. There's some games, though, that when you fight back, the further you sink, much like quicksand. And that's what that game really resembled for me. You heard the comments by Braden Shen. It's no surprise. You heard Drew Bannister talk about it. Those games, you look internally and you say, this isn't about X's and O's. We were not ready to play. We weren't ready to play the game from the start. We didn't do anything to manufacture energy in that game, and it just kind of happened one after another after another. So this is going to be a bit of an early season gut check time for me. I think the Blues need to come out and respond very well here tonight. Do they need to win? No. But they need to show that there's pride when you put on that uniform. And, a lot of the guys that have been around a long time that have been part of that cup run, Jordan Bennington, where his whole run started back in 19 as he returns to Philly tonight. Braden Shen, Colton Parayko. You have players like Ryan Suter, guys that have been around the league a long time. This is a pride check time for me to get out there tonight and show a wonderful effort because, like I mentioned, it's not X's and O's. This is more about executing and bringing that spirit tonight.
Joe, I know it's only 10 games into the season, and it seems an odd question to ask, but is this the same team as what we've seen from the last couple of years in terms of the mistakes that are made and the mindset in the locker room?
It's interesting, Alex. You bring in new players like they have. You added more speed. You look at the way Holloway's performed. You look at the way Matthew Joseph's performed. Look at this team without Matthew Joseph. I'm not saying that he's the reason why that debacle happened in Ottawa, but certainly his speed, his tenacity, his energy, it brings something to the game. You look at players like Broberg. I think Alexander Texier's had a really nice start to the year. This certainly is a team, I think, in a little bit of transition with new pieces. Now, what's different about this team compared to most teams is that it's not the new pieces that are having a tough time adjusting. To me, it's more about the guys that have been around a while having a rougher time figuring out their new role within everything going on. Look at a Braden Shen here. Tonight's game, he's getting moved back down to a third line on the wing. Dylan Holloway is going to be put in his spot, second line center. Okay, so, Dylan Holloway, it's been a quick adjustment for him. But now how is the captain, Braden Shen, going to respond by this, quote-unquote, little bit of a demotion, a little bit of a wake-up call for him as he moves back to the wing? A player like Pavel Buchnevich, he's used to playing the wing. He's used to playing with Robert Thomas. They're saying, no, you're not playing wing. We'll have you in the middle. We're going to have you in the middle here for at least a year or two, maybe until a Dvorsky comes up, and all of a sudden we'll kick you back out to the wing. But so to me, it's a team that the older guys, the guys that have been around here, they're the ones that are having a rough time adjusting. So that's where, when I mentioned the gut check time, when I mentioned all this being handled internally, those are the players that need to really step up here tonight. It's a Braden Shen. It's a Jordan Kyrou. Does he finally get off the 9-game skid since he scored his 2 openers? Pavel Buchnevich, who hasn't really looked like himself here, especially in the last 2 or 3. The faceoffs haven't been good. The turnover has been a little excessive. It's those Blues players that you really want to see step up in tonight's game.
Hey, Joe, we appreciate the time as always, man. Thanks so much for hopping on with us today. Enjoy yourself tonight. Game, once again, on 101 ESPN. Blues versus the Flyers. Pre-game with Alex starts at 5. Puck drop for that one at 6. You'll see Joey Vitale on FanDuel Sports Midwest. We'll talk to you again next Thursday, Joe. Appreciate the time as always, man.
Hey, sounds good, boys. You guys have a great week as well.
Absolutely. That's Joey Vitale joining us as he does each and every Thursday here on BK and Ferrario. We're going to hit the rewind coming up next here on 101 ESPN. If you missed anything from today's show, Take two. Hey, if you missed anything from today's show, be sure to check out the podcast page. 101ESPN.com or the free 101 ESPN app is where you go to find it. It's all presented by
Dobbs Tire and Auto Centers.
If you go over there, you will hear our conversation with Bill DeWitt III. That is now posted. You can also check it out on Twitter at 101 ESPN STL. That is where it, at 101 ESPN. That's where it's been posted. You can get the link over there. Super easy to be able to view it that way. We talked to Bill DeWitt about why the team is supporting Amendment 2 to legalize sports betting. He also explained what the future looks like for the Cardinals broadcast, what went into the decisions that were announced earlier today to decline options on Gibson, Lynn, and Middleton. So you can find all of that over on the podcast page, 101ESPN.com, free 101 ESPN app. If it's easier for you, just go over to Twitter at 101 ESPN.
And we labeled it no backbone interview.
Sure.
That's how we labeled it.
That's the way we would describe it. All right, Alex, big news today in sports. Yankees gave away a game. Yankees gave away the series. They were up 5-0 yesterday going into that inning, and they coughed it away. Bad play by Judge, bad play by Volpe, bad play at first base by both Rizzo and, more importantly, by Garrett Cole, who did not cover the bag. They end up doing the thing that we knew the Yankees were capable of, which is bad fundamentals, bad base running, and they lose the game. They lose the series against the Dodgers. What was your biggest takeaway from this series, Alex?
It was what you just said. I mean, first of all, the Dodgers are a legit force when you talk about their big hitters and then guys that can come up. But, I mean, in St. Louis, it seems there's been a lot of complaining over the last couple of years of, oh, my gosh, we're only focused on defense. You need more offense, blah, blah, blah. You saw that in the World Series last night, and frankly, you saw it in a couple of other games, that if you don't have at least competent defense, you're bleeped when it comes to trying to go anywhere. Like, you've got to have guys who can at least make the play for you. You saw that on one side with the Dodgers on the offense and the defensive side, and you saw the lack of it on the defensive side for the Yankees.
My biggest thing was that these were two flawed teams. The one that had the better superstars that showed up in the World Series ended up being the one that won, Freddie Freeman being the most important among them. But it was two very flawed teams, and that really represents this season. It was a season where there was no truly elite team that was going to be able to make it to the World Series, and the Dodgers came out victorious. So they deserved it, but the Yankees, I think what you really saw from them is it was a super flawed team. There was no great team in the American League.
Yeah, and I think moving forward, I don't think there's anything to learn from the roster construction from the LA Dodgers. It is more about building how do you stop their top three. And we saw in that Yankee series, if you make mistakes, the Dodgers will make you pay. And that's both on the fielding side and on the pitching side. Ohtani, Betts, and Freeman, those guys were unbelievable throughout that playoff run.
All right, tomorrow on the show, we will have Brant Brown, the Cardinals' new hitting coach. So be sure to tune in for that. We'll talk to Brant Brown about his hitting philosophy, what drew him to this specific situation, and just candidly, what went wrong last year in Seattle? He was fired early in the season. What went into that? What did he think went awry for him there after having so much success with both the Marlins and the Dodgers? We'll talk to him about all of that tomorrow here on the show. We will also be joined, as we are each and every Friday, by Mike McKenna, the former NHL goalie. We'll be talking to him about the Blues game from tonight. Alex will have pregame coverage for that starting at 5 o'clock. Puck drop right here in your home of the Blues, 101 ESPN at 6. For Alex and T-Bone, I'm BK. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow at 11 a.m. Fast Lane's coming up next here on 101 ESPN.